Good evening,
Good morning.
everyone.
Oh my god.
Yo,
Got the whole gang. Everybody is here.
Except the link. Oh my god, look at the time. It's 6
The link
p.m.
is here.
We exist in our own time zone.
Yep. Yep.
Ye
Yeah.
Wait for some people to.
we have music on? I don't hear the music.
Oh, I gotta play it. Oh, and I should probably start streaming in Discord.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if you heard me. I don't hear any music on the stream.
I know, I just turned it on.
Okay.
I forgot until you said it the first time.
Yeah. When's the last time we had the whole gang together?
Yesterday.
playoff reviews?
Maybe playoff reviews, yeah.
Was it just us two for the awards? I forget.
It was. It was just us two. We alternated between...
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. That was a decent time, though. It's definitely a different feel when there's just two of us versus four. I feel like it's a little more personal, but I also feel like it just makes for better content when there's more of us around for opinions. So give and take. It's nice to have one of each.
Yeah.
An additional goated and dog opinion.
True. You have a goat opinion, a dog opinion, a monkey opinion. And a ghost
Yeah.
opinion.
Looking at Toadie's roster has lots of opinions on monkeys. Lots
True.
of opinions.
Many. At least one opinion that's strong enough to force that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
True.
Can't wait to
Okay.
frame to talk about the intricacies of drafting that roster.
So we are back today. We just streamed yesterday. I don't think have we streamed back to back like this before?
I don't think so.
Maybe also during playoffs. I'm not too sure.
I
I
think
don't
so.
think we did it. I think it was still weekly.
But yeah, it's good to be back again. Feels like it after taking the long break off between seasons. It's nice to be back swinging, going full force. Yeah, we're back today with Season 4 Swarm Division roster reviews. I'm sure you read the title. And I guess we can just get right into it. We do have maybe introductions, maybe some new people might not know you guys actually. Goder and Lee, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Sure. Go, you can go first.
And let's use this
Okay.
also as a mic check for anyone in the chat if we need to turn anyone up.
I thought that's what I was doing.
Go for it.
I get the joke.
Yeah, you do. Anyone who can see me editing the doc also.
Oh, a mic check.
Yeah.
So now we're doxing you guys. Okay.
Well, all the mods you can see.
Well,
us.
this is a time to introduce yourself, so
Yeah. So yeah.
Social
I'm Goder.
security.
Goder 12. Been in Hustle 4 times. I'm the mod of the Swarm division.
What was your fourth grade teacher's name?
Miss Copeland.
Okay, street you grew up on.
Yeah, I'm not telling you that one. And that's never my secret password for anything. But yes, and I'm washed, but I'm here for a fun time and not a long time.
hell yeah.
Yeah.
Lee.
I'm Leezeypzee. I'm your hustle mod. The genre mod, as people have called me in the past, with prompt roster reviews as to be seen here.
Always exactly as scheduled. And
6
always
p.m. sharp.
delivers.
It's okay. You're not really the genre mod if you play in Swarm.
And obviously we've got Toady and myself back again today.
Yep.
If
Still
you
here.
didn't catch our stream yesterday, the VOD is up on our channel. Just go to the live tab and you'll see all of our VODs.
Just go to YouTube and search NBA.
Yeah, you won't find us there.
Reviews.
But if you hit the subscribe button, you can find us a lot easier on the left-hand side of your screen
True.
under your subscriptions. Anyway, so I do think that we were kind of talking about Swarm teams, at least in comparison to Truant teams, a a little bit earlier, just before we started, thinking across the board, there's a lot more. It's a lot more consistent. There are not very many duds, and there's not as many gimmicks. There are a couple gimmicks, let's be real, but for the most part, a lot of the teams look pretty good, and there's not too many standouts, which makes me think that draft just happened. It progressed in a logical way, right? Where some of the OP broken mons weren't left until round 5 for somebody to be like, oh well, YOLO, screw it, I'll pick it up and just make a busted team. So
yeah. I mean, I found that was the consensus with Swarm last division too. They sort of had the nicest rosters between even Truant and Hustle.
Yeah, I agree, and I also think that it's the division that they have the most. I want to say maybe pressure, the most incentive at least to prove themselves, right? Where they're always at risk of potentially demoting, but also are aiming towards improving enough and showing the quality of their play to get into the Hustle division. So I think this is definitely the what's the comparison? The like college basketball comparison where all of the players are trying to get into the NBA.
Division 1.
Oh, the March Madness tournament?
Yeah, the March Madness tournament. Yeah. Swarm is like that.
We had both instances of promotion and demotion in coming into the
exactly.
season. So be afraid, Swarm. It can happen to you.
I don't know. I feel like it was the
Get your
opposite
heart
for
out.
me. I tried to get into Truant so I could do my team in peace.
Yeah, you really,
but
you're really
that didn't
selling
work.
selling the Truant stocks this season for yourself.
Listen, I had to commit to what I set for myself ahead of time, anticipating that I would be in Truant for it. But you know what? Fuck it, we ball.
And ball indeed you did. So I think let's just, unless there's any last notes just about Swarm as a division, as a whole.
They aren't genres.
Okay, not genres. True. They were the first team, the first division finished?
They're always
Yeah,
the
they were
first
done by, like,
division.
Wednesday.
Last season.
There's speed.
Yeah. So, yep, they definitely had the most time in Grace to fix stuff up, which maybe helped as well. But I think let's just get right into our first team. Toady, if you will. We have Shazam 28 up.
Up over there. And here is Shazam. We
So
are using a timer this time. It's not a hard cutoff, but we'll be using it to kind of keep things moving along. So I will be starting that timer once we kind of get into the groove. This is the first one, so maybe we'll give a little bit more time. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and start it now, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So we will be rating these out of 10, just like we did for the Truant division. I guess I'll start. I personally had Shazam's team at a 7.5. What did you guys think of that?
I had it higher.
Yeah.
I had it at a 8.59.
Okay.
I'm also at 7.5, but I don't know why I'm that low, honestly. I really like a lot of these Pokemon.
I said 6.
6. Damn. Okay, so we're pretty spread.
We're all over
So
the board
let's-
here.
So let's pick the brain then of Toady and Goater, who have it the lowest and highest. What do you think, Toady? What do you think are the low points? And then Goater will talk to you about the high points.
See, you're asking me because you think that there's going to be value in my rating. Let's see what I wrote. I said I like Terra Hydreigon, and then I said double poison is cool, but I'm wondering what value they have over something else. Because I just noticed that the Crobat and the Nidoking. It's not that they really overlap in a lot of ways, but it's just kind of like that's more of like a question. Like, what else could be being used in these points that is currently being used on 2 poison types? I don't know.
Right.
Maybe there's an answer there. And then the last thing was that it seemed kind of spread across mid-level power. So you have like your Mega Scizor and Hydreigon, but aside from that, most of this team is like 14 to 11. You know,
That's true.
So it's like outside of if these two aren't going to have a huge impact in a game, like what are we doing down here? It's not always a bad thing. You can definitely make it work. And the other thing was, so we have some. I think this was a positive actually. Both of the bug weaknesses are Terra Captains, and you have good bug protection otherwise. So for Rizion's like, oh wait, no, I'm thinking of what's it called? Iron
Leaves?
Oh,
Iron Leaves.
Iron
So it
Leaves?
doesn't
Yeah,
even
yeah.
matter. This one's not weak to bug, so forget that. I was gonna say,
Okay,
like, he's
yeah.
getting rid
Well,
of
I
two
think
bubbles.
those points are valid. Yeah, I do think that specifically with like Hydreigon, the psychic and ground weakness that the poison types would normally offer. I know the Crobat isn't weak to ground, but things like that the poison would normally be a detriment to the team. I do think maybe it's a bit of pressure on Hydreigon, but I think it can handle it.
Yeah, but Scizor also resists and Hatterene.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
But-
Okay. So go to what you think.
So, funnily enough, one of my reasons for really liking this team is one of the reasons that Toady doesn't like it.
Okay.
Is yes, well, it has more of that mid-range power. It doesn't feel bad to bring any of these mons to a matchup, right? So
Yeah,
if
I
I'm
agree with
thinking in the building perspective of this team, we use the term building optimally. If you get the reference there. You can really, this team has a high ceiling, right? You have 9 mons that can do work in any matchup.
Yeah.
Bringing Corsola Galar to a matchup does not feel bad. The thing can be a threat at times if you can't break it. And I'm gonna point out something that I do know. I gave it a high rating, but something that I don't like in the roster is that sort of the hazard game, really, because then you're forced to like bring Corsola Galar to set rocks. Otherwise, you're Nidoking and Hydreigon both have rocks. Nidoking has T-spikes, and those are mons that you can bring them, but it feels bad if you've ever used them before. You put rocks on something, you're like, crap.
Well,
That's
Hatterene
fair.
can set rocks. You just put it in something.
Yeah,
True.
True.
I will say my experience with Nidoking, I actually felt like it creates so much pressure
You get a free rock turn?
offensively that you have a lot of chances to actually set the rocks.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Like that was when I used it though in last season, and I think it was pretty much one of my only rockers. And personally, I always felt like it felt good, but maybe it felt good because I just needed it to do that, but it didn't let me down.
Neato.
So
Fair. When I've ever
Well,
used
it
it in the past, I like putting
Yeah.
the sub on it instead. But if the
True,
rocks,
true.
its rocks don't feel like it's good, but if
Yeah.
the team does feel hamstrings, that's pretty much the only thing I don't like about it.
yeah,
Hydreigon
fair.
is a Terra Captain sick. I like Corsola Galar. I am a big Virizion believer. I think that mon's nice, and as a Terra Captain, it can do a little bit more than its point value.
Yep, true.
Good speed.
Very true.
CC is a good move.
Okay.
That's the 9.
Yep. I think before we move on, Lee, do you have anything else to add about Shazam?
Not really. My notes were just that the pivots and breakers are like things that really sell me on teams because that's just how I like to play.
True.
Yeah.
This team does that very, very well.
Yep.
I'm not sold that the hazard control is great, personally. But I've never really seen Crobat do too much in draft, honestly. I've never been on the receiving end of a Crobat. I don't know if it wants to be clicking defog. I just feel like I don't want my Mega Scizor clicking defog. But other than that, I really like the actual core of this team. I think Raikou and Nidoking can just come in and click buttons a lot, and that's something that I just like doing. So
Yeah.
I like this team.
All right.
So I
timer
think
did
we
run
settled-
out, so if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think we probably averaged around like 7.5 to 8 out of 10 or so
Yeah.
collectively. I think that's pretty fair. Unless Toady, your opinion changed. I feel like you were the most not attached to your.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean towards just agreeing with the positives that you guys were saying. I was really not looking for the positives on it right there,
Yeah.
aside from just like kind of the surface level stuff.
That's fair.
That's kind of how I've been approaching a lot of these. I'll see if I immediately like it, then I'm gonna look at all the things I like about it, and if there's something that stands out to me as questionable right away, then I'm just gonna look at that and not really write anything else. Because I'm looking at it from the roster screen, which doesn't have any of the breakdowns of stuff, so it really is just kind of a first glance for a lot of these.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, let's move on. We have a resident
Mr.
Leezey.
Lee.
Oh, look at that!
Wow. Well, Lee, you want to
He's right
kick
here.
us off? What do you think of your team?
I
I know you
think
just played today, but that's not. We don't have to include stuff about that.
Dogs, yeah.
yeah, I just got toasted today, but I like my team. I wrote in my book that I'm bad as a joke, but no, I really like this team. I got
Dude,
the top
calm
5
down.
that I wanted.
All right, stop raging. Jesus.
Okay,
He's so
sorry, my bad. I got the top 5 that I wanted. as my first 5 picks, so that was really cool. And then just kind of filling in the rest. I feel like I did a fine job. I think this team's like a 7.5 on like a reasonable scale. I think it's got a lot of breakers, good hazard control, and just immediate pressure, as well as really solid defensive options and pivots.
I think that's very fair. What did everybody else have as a rating?
I had it at an 8.5.
Wow.
Well, I knew Lee was going to be here, so I put it at a 5 out of 10 and didn't look back.
Based.
I have one question, and this is the only thing that I looked at, and it's really the thing that I want to ask. What is Starmie doing here?
Starmie is just like a really solid, immediate, special like threat that can clear out that like pressures ground types for a Mega Arrow to kind of pop off. That Raging Bolt also can't deal with. And then it also just is like a proactive Rapid Spinner for hazard control that I like.
Because the reason that I ask is because, and I noticed this when I was talking to Metro when she was building, is the Jellicent does a pretty good job of being the bulky water type, and then with a ghost type, of course, also answers fighting type in a way that Starmie might as well for some of those specific matchups. Aside from the speed, I just wonder where like maybe there's a different special attacker that you would want there, because you have one of the best spinners, most consistent spinners in Treads, who doesn't mind running spin every single game. It's just good on him in general. It's not like he's trying to fit it on there with something else. And like I said, Jellicent answers kind of like what Starmie would do defensively. So that's just what I was wondering. Because you like, I get what you mean now, where it's like it helps Bolt offensively by breaking those things, but you also I don't know if there's something else out there for a similar point tier that kind of does that similarly. Like maybe, I mean, Mo-Chen is your grass type here, but maybe there's a grass type in that range that can help with those mons too. I don't know, but that was my question, and I didn't really look at it past that because I figured you would talk about your team. So 5 out of 10, and I'll raise it if you guys say good things. So
That's fair. I think I actually might also be lowballing this because I have it at a 6.5, but it was for a couple of reasons that I kind of just couldn't really get out of my mind, and it was also kind of centered around the Starmie and the Mega Arrow. Like, I like Starmie, but I think that it is so dependent on being in front of something that it forces out in order for Analytic to be active. Because it only has 100 special attack without Analytic and doesn't hit extremely hard. As we did see in your game, this is just kind of anecdotal, but we did see in your game that it failed to KO the AV Mesprit at like 22% or whatever it was at, right?
Yeah.
So obviously it was AV, and that kind of sucks. But in the case where you need to just force something out that's in front of you, I feel like it doesn't always hit that threshold of being strong enough, unless you can more consistently be in front of something that you like really have to switch out from Starmie, like the ground types, like the fire types, like the fighting types. And I think that it will be hard to do that when your only real pivots are switchers, because Starmie's not going to be in against the ground types because you can't volt switch in front of him, right? Now you do have Urshi with U-turn, and I think that Urshi and Starmie are going to be good, but for the most part, the fairy types that Urshi is bringing in, just because that's like the main check to fighting dark, right? That is U-turning on the fairy types coming in. Starmie doesn't really break them, you know? It doesn't have anything to hit them particularly hard. Psyshock is fairly low BP. They will often be Fizz Def if they're trying to check the Urshi, which I like. And honestly, I don't know why I'm so hyper fixated on Starmie. It is just a 12-point mon, and you don't have to bring it all the time, and it doesn't feel bad if you don't bring it. But I do think it's a big part of your speed, unless you're always running very fast treads, and even then, I don't think treads is like always wants to do that, and it doesn't have the highest speed. Other than Arrow, which I think is still similar in that it wants to be in front of something that it always forces out, and I don't think the positioning game is strong enough to take advantage of those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I follow.
Okay. That being said, I think there's a lot of really good heavy hitters, and I personally am a big fan of your Terra Captain combo, actually. Like, Urshi single plus Woshen, I think is so flexible. Be it if you just want to click banded close combat with Urshi, or if you want to be like Terra Steel to beat the fairies instead of you turning out on them, or I feel like it gives you a lot of setup opportunities and a lot of breaking potential. And Woshen is similar to other things that people use the blanket check, whatever thing they need to not win the game on the opponent's side, right? Like if it's Terra Poison, or if it's Terra Steel, or Terra Fairy, or something, Terra Water even, just a defensive Terra type to just prevent an opponent's win con. I think it's a very flexible combo, and I think that's the best thing on the team for me.
Wait.
Cool.
Gooder, you have any thoughts on the team?
My score stems from lots of good hard hitting mons, but I feel like Treads is a lot has to do so much for this team because you got a lot of mons that are weak to fairy. You have triple dark, right? Treads is like relegated to coming in on these fairy type moves a lot of the time, and there isn't a wish passer to sort of keep it alive. Arcanine, I guess, can do it too, but and then if you're bringing like offensive Starmie, which we talked about a lot too, Iron Tread was also forced into that removal role at the same time. So I feel like it's just Porsche, like pigeonholed into the same role in most games. This bulky pivot remover, which it's the best thing it's at, so power to it. But interesting with the triple dark, double ghosts, double water, kind of interesting. But lots of threats in this team. You can win games.
Yeah, I like that there's easy substitutes for things. Like if Treads just has a good offensive matchup, it doesn't have to be the spinner, although it likely will be for a lot of games. Similar to like Starmie, you can, if it doesn't have a good, or if you really need the defensive water type, just swap it out for Jellicent, and it's really not the end of the world. But again, you do lose a lot of speed on your team without it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will point out too that I don't know if you just glossed over it maybe, but for the poison matchup you still have the Geezing as well, so it's not all on Treads to deal with that. But I do agree that Treads, if it does want to be running AV a lot, not having that reliable recovery. I mean, again, I just used this mon, so I have recent experience with it. And one of the biggest things for it was having that grassy terrain and having the having like the wish passing if I needed it to. It's like it really keeps it in that role of being able to check those fairies, and it does wear down very quickly, and you might find yourself in places where you're trying to make that hard read against a mon that can throw out a fairy move or can throw out an aura sphere, and you might not be able to take that enough times throughout the course of a match. And even just, again, we're referencing the game that was just played today, which normally we wouldn't do in the roster review, but just because you're here. The beginning of the match was just pivoting around, and it just didn't really make a lot of progress for you, I think, for that reason. Like, it ended up hurting you more because you're competing against things that come in and do just heal up with the leftovers and stuff. So
it's hard for Treads to run AV too, anyway, because of it's the only reliable rocker.
Yeah,
Rock's Arrow coming at you.
That's true too.
Bulky Rock's Arrow. It's a set.
I don't think
it's Rock's.
True.
Is Rock's Arrow actually that bad? I've never used Mega
It's
Arrow.
not that bad.
It's not. It's feasible.
You can't run it if you want to run Dragon Dance, but it's honestly fine.
Yeah.
Both Terra Caps in the team are good though. So.
Yeah, I love the captains here. Any final closing thoughts on Lee's team?
That was it. Terra Captains are huge.
Dope.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right.
I love
the team.
Well,
I like the team, and I think my ratings will be lower on average than other people's, just because I have like a slightly lower grading system. So my 6.5 is maybe a little bit
okay.
disingenuous compared to the rest, but yeah,
mine's a bit higher to compensate.
Yeah, to compromise. Awesome. Okay, moving on.
For a change of pace, let's look at a good team without any flaws. Here's mine.
A team with only monkeys on it. Can you run us through your explanation of why Lando, Klefki, Seismitoad, and Galvantula are monkeys?
So actually, believe it or not, even though Lando is the first like non-monkey that I drafted, I think he's the one that is the most like of a stretch to be like, well, he's kind of monkey-like, because the other ones have different reasons.
I don't know. He's got gorilla arms, dude. Look
He
at
does,
him.
but like he's not a monkey, but like he looks kind of like one, and that's the best that I got for him. But if you look at some of the other options, now there's actually like some reasoning there, right? So I think the best one is Klefki, because it's a Pokemon that's a key, so it's a monkey, and so that works. And then
Toady.
Seismitoad is just because Toad, so it's a cheat. I'm allowed to use that.
Yeah.
And then Galvantula,
I can't wait for this one.
It's just because it's Squitter from Donkey Kong Country 2, so he's fine.
Okay.
But
Monkey
I have no
adjacent.
idea what that is.
he's
The spider with the shoes, right?
Yeah. So he counts. He's friends with them.
All right, dude.
Yeah. So that's why.
Is Mr. Mime a monkey?
No, he's too human-like.
Definitely a
I
clown.
described
Lando
this.
specifically human-like?
Is Monkey a clown?
Yeah, but I think that the reason, like I said, Lando's like the closest one to being like, this doesn't count. But also like Lando distinctly has like the gorilla arms. Like he looks ape-like more than Mime just kind of looks like he's just a human.
Is Conkeldurr a monkey?
He could be close, but I don't know.
Or like
Fighting type
Machamp?
is gonna, yeah. Machamp is a weird one. Machamp's like very distinctly like a human bodybuilder. The part of the problem too is like some of these mons are wearing clothes. Like Machamp's wearing a clothes. I mean, like that kind of.
Lando has a tail, right? Look at that.
It does kind of look like a tail. Yeah.
Is Goku a monkey?
Maybe.
He's
He
like
used to be?
he's sort of in between, right? He's like kind of like a, because he's based on
But like,
Sun
but like
Wukong
if
in a way.
Goku was a Pokemon, would you draft it for your monkey team?
I think I would. I think that would count.
Okay.
He wouldn't be like he wouldn't be in the
draft,
first. He wouldn't be in the first group of picks, but he would definitely be on the list of like, this one's fine.
But you
if I
would
need to.
draft like human monkey adjacent.
I think the reason that he's different is because his design like is based, like the entire thing with Dragon Ball is like based on Sun Wukong, which is a monkey. So it's like that's more like this is a human that like has monkey elements than like, well, he's a human, so he's kind of like a monkey. So I think that's a little different.
I don't believe you.
But
I do.
But yeah, it's a complicated discussion because as soon as you start looking at like, because this actually came up in my other group chat when we were talking about which ones, like what's a monkey, because Rillaboom's not a monkey, he's a gorilla, right? Or like there's any number of them that's like, why do these count as like the monkey team when you're talking about Annihilate and
Yeah,
stuff
the
like that?
eye.
And the reality is that in the Pokemon world, like a monkey doesn't necessarily have to have the same biological requirements as it does in our world, because clearly there are mons in the decks that have monkey in their description, like the toxic monkey Pokemon Grafaiai, who is distinctly an ii that is a lemur and not a monkey. But at the same time, it's like
in the Pokemon world, the term monkey and primate are used synonymously.
Yeah, and you there in the real world, when chimps are the closest thing to us, that's the distinction that you can make. You can say, okay, here's humans, and then here's primates that are all like, you know,
Okay, little boomer.
They all like fit into like the rest of the group.
Okay.
In the Pokemon world, there's too many things in between human and monkey that there has to be a distinction for, like, these are the monkeys that are like more like monkeys and gorillas, and these are the weirdly human-like humans that aren't humans, like Gardevoir and stuff.
So if they're like
that's my
goofy
reason.
little guys, like that's okay. But if they're more human-like, then kind of not cool.
I
Is
think
Latios a monkey?
No, if they're goofy little guys that have elements of anything that we broadly associate as the rest of the primates in the human world, those are the monkeys of the Pokemon world.
Okay.
Even if they don't have tails, like, which is usually the distinction in our world.
Okay.
So we have apes and monkeys, and they're different things here. But in Pokemon, you have chimps that evolve into monkeys and monkeys that evolve into gorillas. They're all the same in the Pokemon world. So
All right.
Toady
I'm
doesn't
gonna
want to.
reel it back a
I was
little.
saying-
No more
so-
monkey.
10 out
I'm
of
saying
10.
Toady doesn't want to reveal his text, so he's using all his roster time to philosophize on monkeys.
Yeah.
Anyways, 7.5. I'm doing it.
7.5.
I'm crazy.
High.
That's a
Well,
little low.
I rated it monkey out of 10.
That's good.
My notes say LOL 3.
True.
3 out of 10.
I do think, objectively speaking, it's probably one of the worst.
All right. Okay.
What do
All
you-
right, guys. All
I
right.
don't
We
think
get
it's
it.
that bad. It has
Toady, what would you legitimately
Come on.
rate this if somebody else drafted this?
3 out of 10. it is severely lacking many things.
What's it lacking in other than any mod
So
with
I
recovery?
did sort of like make up for like the lack of hazard control like with Lando and Cleffy a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, like no reliable recovery. Like even my defensive mon that can come in on things does not have a button that it can click to heal. Like both of them, Cleffy and Seismitoad are both like, oh well, we'll come in until we die, and that's about it. And
Yeah.
even Lando, like all 3 of them, they just don't have recovery. And then no spinner. So like I'm defogging. I'm getting rid of whatever I'm putting down, and whatever I'm putting down is maybe Lando putting rocks and maybe Klefki putting spikes, and probably
Yeah, but-
not, because if Klefki's coming, it's probably there to do something else that I desperately need on that team.
But the way you kind of forced to play this team, you don't really want to take the time to
No,
take hazards
exactly.
off. Anyway, you're gonna
I'm just kind of
just
gonna be clicking
take your
spikes,
monkeys,
so
hit them against the wall, see what sticks, and then hopefully you win the game.
I
True.
think
It's very one-dimensional, but the mons are good and they can do a lot of things offensively.
I think
Mixed
it's
attackers.
one-dimensional, but also entirely unpredictable, and that's what
Yeah,
makes it good.
it's one-dimensional playstyle, but the mons themselves, who knows what the heck? You can bring a lot
never
of things.
know what I'm gonna bring.
You know. Special Infernape, Physical Infernape,
Yeah.
Bulk Infernape, any Lando set.
I actually think the best thing about this team is the Terra Captains. I think this is a good Terra Captain combo.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
I agree too. Yeah.
Okay, this is
Yeah, we've done enough.
destroying my brain cells. I can actually feel my brain
Impulse.
rotting behind my eyes. So
Impulse.
impulse.
What did I
I'll start
get?
with this one. I actually kind of flip-flopped a few times. And initially I had it above 8, maybe like I think I was teetering between 8 to 8.5. And then I realized that it falls for the same trap with Aegislash that I fell for season 2 with Aegislash Mega Diancie
Having
plus a
bad
dark
coach.
type. And I think Aegislash will be relegated to the Switch for way too many things. And won't be able to run anything but like Spadef leftovers. Now it could be you could just not rely on Aegislash and just play hyper offensive
What about
and try and run
Fezantipity,
Autono. Sorry?
though? What about Fezantipity?
Fez is fine. I don't think it's that reliable.
No, but it's like there are certainly going to be matches where that can be your special defense check.
Yeah, not just like I mean Autono can be Spadef too. It's just that like its typing is just very good, especially defensively in general. It doesn't have to specifically be special, but
Yeah, I guess Fez is
just kind of
typing
on
is better
average
for a
steel
physically
types.
defensive one.
Yeah, on average, steel types will like having a decent Spadef stat, just because of all the special moves that steel is good against.
Yeah, and this is just showing stats for shield version, right? Yeah, because
Yeah, it's not showing the 140 attacks. Yeah. So I think that compared to I'm just gonna compare. It's kind of apples and oranges, but compared to Tony's team with Darkrai and this team with Darkrai, I don't think Darkrai is going to get as much value here with how few pivots it will have. Like it feels like Darkrai is either switching into Psychic types on a read, or it's just revenging, or maybe Talonflame is switching in. There are pivots, right? There's Talonflame, Fez, and Celebi. For the most part, you're not running more than 2 of those a game, and they're kind of like inconsistent for what you would want them to be. I don't know. It's I'm kind of I love Aegislash as a mon, but I don't think it's a good like core to the team. I've never seen it as a Terra Captain. I'm interested to see that. But I have the team I lowered my rating from an 8 to a 7.5. I still do think it's a really good team. Dragonite offers a lot of flexibility. I'm also not a Donphan believer. Terra Suicune feels weird. But like Darkrai, Mega Diancie, and Dragonite, I think just they're like dragging the team by the hair behind it. Like you guys are coming with me. we're gonna be a good team, damn it.
How would you feel about? I mean, we have the points available. What about Celebi as a Terra Captain instead of Suicune?
That is interesting.
Because Celebi is famously held back by this.
By typing.
Really
That's true. I think
unfortunate
if
typing.
if Celebi was like a fairy type, that actually solves some of the team's problems. Because that's another thing is Diancie is not a real fairy type.
Yeah.
It's like a fairy type until it mega evolves, and it's not a real mon until it mega evolves, so it's not a real fairy type. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that would be a good swap. Anyone else have thoughts?
I think
Right, does this seem really high?
Yeah, you go ahead.
This was, I think, my favorite team in Swarm.
Okay.
I do agree with you on the pivots, but Pheasantdippy, Celebi, and even like Baton Pass, Diancie lead, Mega it. Those are pivots, that benefit the team. But I do agree that Darkrai and Dragonite don't get the full value. I look at this team and I see, 5 mons I have to prep for to not lose the game, and that can be overwhelming.
That's true.
I'm a big Aegislash believer, and I'm a Dawn fan believer. So my score is going to be slightly higher than yours, but it's just, a solidly constructed team. I like the type cores, Fairy, Dragon, Steel, Water, Fire, Grass are all good mons. Wish there was a fighting type, but I don't know. I think it's well constructed. You do rely on Rock, Celebi, and Dawn fan a lot too.
True. Before we move to somebody else's opinion, I do want to point out I did forget that Pheasantdippy was a fairy type when I was looking at Mega Diancie as a fake fairy. So there is that option. I do just want to clarify that, so maybe that changes somebody's opinion.
I thought you were intentionally also kind of counting it as a fake fairy type, because it's not a fake fairy type, but it also isn't. It isn't the same as some of the fairies that, like, when you say, "Oh, I need to direct a fairy," it's not necessarily one of the ones that comes to mind.
You think of it as a poison type.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's a pretty good fairy. I don't know. Do you think every fairy needs Wish? Is that what you're
fairy.
saying?
No, I don't think it's a bad fairy either. I think its identity is more poison type, and that's why I'm amending my old, not rating, but my old analysis of Mega Diancie's a fake fairy, because there is a semi-real fairy.
Mm-hmm. I have this team at a 9.6.
9.6. Is that a typo?
No, that's there for specifically because I needed to.
He likes it more than one of the 9.5s. Yes.
Yes, you got it.
True.
I like the team. It doesn't. It's.
Lee, what are your thoughts?
Ugly.
And do you play Impulse in the season?
Do I play Impulse this season? I don't think so.
You do not.
My thoughts on the team are the top 5 on the team all have at least one immunity, which is pretty cool. Makes me think that if those are the top 5 you're looking to bring every game, it makes running choice items kind of an inherent gamble. If you're less enticed to click your psychic move in front of Pheasantdippy because Darkrai could come in for free, so that's kind of scary. I have that a lot of the mons are really good at spreading status as well, and that can really help Dragonite or Mega Diancie in endgames as well, as well as Suicune setups.
There's actually
and I have this as an
8.5 without
8.5.
immunities, by the way, or 2 mons on this team without immunities.
Well, who are the 2 mons without immunities?
Celebi and
Celebi?
Suicune.
Celebi has an immunity to status. Boom.
That's
Mind
not an immunity to
blown.
Not how that works.
Nah, that smells like some bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, if they make it a Terra Cap, then it could be. Well, Suicune's also a Terra Cap.
Oh, okay. Suicune has an immunity to Terra Cap. The whole team did it. We got there.
So yeah, that is an 8.5.
Nice.
Okay. I think I'm again on the lower end. An 8,
and an 8 as well. I think the thing that stood out to me is that I guess aside from Magic Bounce Diancie, the hazard game is a little bit sus.
Mm-hmm.
I am also not a Dawn fan non-believer, and I'm a Talonflame believer. So I think these are good mons that you can definitely fit on the teams. I'm worried that if these are your when these are your only 2 options, sometimes the place that you want them to fit on a team because you're bringing them is filling a different role along with that. And Talon, when it's the role that it wants to fill is a defensive mon, and you need it to defog, but also, oh hey, there's the mon that has rock coverage that you're also kind of responsible for as the defensive slot that's being brought here. It might run into issues with that, where it's like if you're a little too pressured to bring the hazard control, trying to make one of these work in a matchup that they otherwise wouldn't work in, whereas normally I think they're better as specialist kind of hard counters for some teams. So that's my concern with that. And I guess I don't really have an opinion on Age of Slush. I'm not a believer or non-believer, so hard to say on that. But I definitely agree with Dragonite being a mon that can just kind of like win a game if you let it. And I think it's supported pretty well around it. But,
yeah.
And at worst, you're just running boots anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
but
I do think I'm thinking about Terra Suicune more, and I'm thinking about how stopping its Calm Mind rest set is gonna pan out when it's just like a fairy type or when it's a ghost type or something like that, for example.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, that's actually gonna be probably pretty tough.
yeah, but it is your only water type.
Yeah.
So
But I
like,
mean,
if
when
you
it
have
comes
to
in,
use it for
and
that, then...
if it comes in and then Calm Mind wins when you're not a water type, you don't need a water type anymore.
Does he win the game?
Yeah.
That's true.
So maybe I'm discrediting the team a little bit. I still do think, honestly, 7.5 from me is still actually one of the, funny enough, one of the higher ratings that I gave most people in the division. So I do think it's probably top 5 for me in the division.
The defeatist scale.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, I think we're good to move on to our next team. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
We've been at it
All right, let's
for a
move
while.
on. Yeah, all right, we've got Fairs.
A promotee?
From OT, yes. He,
I
I think, was the top seed out of Truant from the regular season, and then lost first round, I believe, of playoffs to either the winner or the finalist. I don't remember, but it was somebody who made it all the way. It's hard to blame
Was it?
them for losing to the winner.
Was it Metro?
I think it's Metro, yeah.
Lost to Metro, and Metro was the finalist, right?
Yeah. Fairs beat round 1, he beat Snivy, and then lost to Metro round 2.
Yeah, okay. So had a good showing, made it to round 2, lost to the finalist. I mean, hard to not promote them there, honestly.
Well, wait, but if you lose round 2, aren't you always losing to the finalist?
Yes.
Yes.
That's enough out of you.
Well, listen. Oh, he lost to Roy, apparently. Who won, which is even more of a
Wait, did he lose
good
to
thing
Roy?
for Fairs.
He lost
what
to Metro
Lucas is saying in
playoffs, but no, he lost to Metro because Roy won the whole thing.
No,
Unless
yeah,
you're saying the regular season, in which case I have no
Message
idea.
retracted.
I remember helping Metro build against Fairs, so
Okay.
if they played in the playoffs, then she had to have won. But I don't know if that was the playoffs or the regular season.
Yeah.
There's lost to Metro and Roy beat Kenpai in the semifinals.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
So, who's got first dibs? Who's up first?
Well, I'm playing him sometime this week, so I'll go first. I actually said 9 out of 10 because I like this team.
Okay.
I think it's a really solid. Just like everything's spread out and diverse. Like you have your really threatening instant threat with Gouging Fire. You had Meowscarada, who's super flexible and fast. Zapdos, one of my favorite draft mons, just does so many things. Great typing. It just does a lot. Really good hazard control with, I think Blastoise and Zapdos are two of the most consistent of their respective types of hazard removal in draft. And then I think with all that aside, like not even like if we ignore that, I think the Terra Metagross has the potential to kind of be like a sleeper pick on this team, like a sleeper like, oh, I didn't spend enough time prepping for this Metagross because I had to prep for the Gouging Fire and the Meowscarada and like all this other stuff, and even the other Terra Captain. Like there's so many things that you have to prep for with this team, and all of it's solid that I think that Metagross it might end up being underrated for people building against this team, and end up being like kind of like a sleeper, really good Terra Captain here. Because we talked a little bit about Terra Captain, Metagross, and Truant, and I don't know where we landed on it. I don't remember if we like decided that was like a really good Terra Captain or not. But I think in this specific case, like it's definitely like it's a good mon to kind of be the one that's like, I don't know what I'm gonna prep for this, you know?
Yeah, even just being Terra, like with the Cosmic Power, Body Press, Stored Power set, It could be Terra fighting for like stab, body press, or it could be Terra, I don't know, fairy to just have better resistances to something that would like a fire type or something, right?
Yeah.
I do think it's good. I think as a win condition, it's a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah.
But it is freed up for the most part because you can bring Orthworm if you need a second steel type, and you can bring Rock Nidoqueen if you need a rocker. You know, you aren't really pressed for a knockoff user when you have Meowscarada. I don't remember if Okidogi has it, but I mean, you already have it with.
It does.
So yeah, I think Metagross is actually really freed up.
Even Blastoise, Mega Blastoise has it now too, I think.
No.
Are you sure?
I think you're thinking of Swampert.
I thought they gave knockoff to a bunch of the starters in the second DLC that didn't have it before.
Yeah, they gave it to Infernape and Swampert.
Oh, maybe that was it. Okay.
So I do think though that if Metagross isn't like a win condition setup set with like weakness policy or with cosmic power, that the team kind of lacks win condition outside of Gouging Fire. I think Gouging Fire is going to have to pull so much weight for this team, which is what kind of holds my rating back. I gave the team a 7 out of 10, which is still decent on the Naheim scale. It's definitely like having a B is a more than passing grade. It's like very passable. It's definitely a good team. I think that relying on Gouging Fire, relying on Meowscarada for pretty much the only speed on the team, unless you're like rapid spinning on Blastoise, but that's kind of fake. And the only other real setup win condition is like Sinistcha. Okidogi's not Terra, so it's gonna not really be able to set up that effectively.
On Blastoise is fake?
When you're counting it as speed control.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant...
Said Meowscarada is the only fast one unless you count Rapid Spin Blastoise. Yeah.
All I heard was unless you count Rapid Spin Blastoise, but that's kind of fake. I was like, wait, what? What are we talking
No, Rapid Spin Mega Blastoise is fine.
My speed control is DD Gouging Fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Well, I have this team rated at a 9 as well.
Wow.
This is, I feel like Matt drafted this team. It's a lot of good mons, a lot of versatility. You mentioned Metagross; it's free to do a lot, whatever it wants, because it's other roles are, covered. It's slow again. You mentioned that as well. It's like Meowscarada, and then huge gap, and so you're never running max speed Zapdos. It's like maybe 2 out of 10 games. So it's like Meowscarada to Gouging Fire is a huge jump. And there's no fairy type, but double steel is kind of nice to take Dragon. And neither wants to really take a special move, right? Team just gets hard dumped on by Draco Meteors unless you're running Terra Fairy.
Yeah, that's actually pretty true.
So which is half of Matt's teams. Anyway, it's just I feel like it's a Matt team.
I feel like AV Metagross could handle that.
But Fairs has the advantage because you don't know how Fairs is going to EV things.
True. Leezey, Fairs is your week 2 opponent. Any thoughts going into the matchup without revealing your hand?
Yeah, what
are
you bringing?
I've looked at his team as a as a precursor to this. I haven't looked at it in a matchup standpoint. I have this team as an 8 and then in brackets 0.5 because I really like it. I think the only negative is the speed. There's a lot between 70 and 80 going on here that might pose a problem. But Scarf Nidoqueen is kind of crazy, and I like that a lot.
Nidoqueen is really flexible.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like its spot here.
Yeah, I'm not sold on the bottom 3. I've been an Okidogi disbeliever forever. But the top 6 or 7, however many mons he has, are all insane, so I can't discredit them too much.
True.
Yeah.
I'm the biggest Dunsparce believer in this call.
So much like
the high of the draft it was.
I'd hope so.
He's out of his mind. Draft Dunsparce.
True. I mean, it is a rocker that can supplement Nidoqueen and Metagross.
Yeah.
It's not great. I mean, like Orthworm is too.
Eviolite. It can get Eviolite now, so it can.
It is fine.
Yeah. Might be a game it shows up. Who knows?
Yeah, I didn't realize that the team didn't have a fairy type. Being completely honest.
Yeah, I didn't.
And I do think that
It looks so
Although
diverse.
Mega Blastoise is good to like come in, take a hit something else, and flip turn.
Yeah.
Potentially rapid spin. It's not like as consistent of a water type as I feel like this team wants. I think Mega Blastoise on a more strictly offensive team. Not that this team is defensive. I think its offense is like a B, but its defense is like a C, maybe C minus. I don't think its defense is very good.
Mhm.
So I do think that a like more reliable water type pivot than Mega Blastoise would have been nice here.
I'm just thinking
But
of
it's honestly completely serviceable.
the interaction, because it doesn't have a fairy type. Draco Meteor is free. How do you usually punish, Draco Meteor overheat clones? Come in, you set up on the weekend run. It just happens that the DD sweeper on this team is also weak to Draco Meteor, so the drop isn't as
And then the only other
punishing, right?
Sinistcha, Metagross,
Metagross.
Oogie, none of which are particularly.
Bond either.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
definitely have its strength.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
My final thought
Okay.
is that I changed the timer to 6 minutes instead of 5 minutes because we've been blitzing the 5-minute timer, and I think
Let us
6
know.
minutes will be better.
That's perfect.
Well, it's because I don't want to like cut people out. We're getting to like the third person talking when we hit the 0. So I'm hoping with 6 minutes when we get to 0, it'll be a better time for me to be like, all right, guys, the timer stopped. So like instead of like halfway through the discussion. So
Well, on to the next.
Okie dokie.
We have. On to the next. We have Afonso, our first rain team, and unless you count Zathanas as a sun team, when he doesn't have a drought user, which I think it's a sun adjacent team where it likes to use sun. But other than that, I think this is our first weather team.
Dude, you forget the
We
full
had
weather
the
team.
Stormtide's team.
Oh my god, I did forget the
Because
full
Stormtide
weather team.
hogged all the weather. No one else could draft
That is
any.
old news.
Yeah, no, you guys are very right. I forgot about Stormtide. There's like snow splashes in Truant. I think there's a couple. I don't think there's a sand splash outside of Stormtide.
Yeah, that's true.
But this
And-
is the first. Okay, at least this
I mean,
is
who
the
do you really
first
splash
dedicated
sand
to
with?
one
That's
weather team,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which I feel like is kind of a stretch though. It's like when the Guinness Book of World Records like makes some hyper niche category that's like the first person who's exactly 182 centimeters tall with only 9 toes. This is the record for the fastest
Sports
person
stats.
who meets this category to like run this amount of distance. I don't know.
For a weather team that you would see in OU. Like,
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start with this one because I have the fewest amount of points to say, so you guys can just elaborate on that. I give this team a 7. It's a rain team. It's going to win games, but it's like very matchup fishy. If you have a good rain matchup, you're going to run over your opponent. If you have a rough rain matchup, you might struggle a lot. It also does this. I'm looking at this team and doesn't like ground moves too much, right? You got Pelipper and Thundurus that, Edgequake can really mess this team up.
Ludicolo.
Yes, there is a Ludicolo.
Ludicolo
Well, I was
is
gonna
real,
say-
dude. I love this one.
Dude, I drafted Ludicolo as my bulky water for my team one season and brought it to 6 of the 8 games. So there was times where it popped off, and then times where I'm like, why is this my water type?
well, it's the same problem with Ogerpon, like that we talked about in Truant too, where it's like when your water type is neutral to fire and your grass type is, your water type is neutral to fire and ice, and your grass type is neutral to electric. There was like a bunch of them where it's like it can't be your only one. Luckily, this is a rain team, so it's not the only water type on this
the only game we lost was to a Mamoswine, so your point's correct. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Rain, matchup, fishy, it will win games, and really weak to ground and Edgequake. I'm
I
just
will
looking
say
at
that one of the key mons that's weak to ground, like if you're considering the mons that are going to come to most games, two of them are not weak to ground here. Like they're like immune to ground, and then these ones are neutral, and then this one's a Terra Captain. Like so, I feel like it's weak to ground if you bring the bottom 4 Pokemon in our Chaladon and then don't Terra it. But I would not say that this team is very weak to ground when you actually look at the point distribution of where that weakness is.
Yeah, I actually agree, and I think I have probably the most, I guess like the highest opinion of the team. So I'll take the reins from here. I have it at 8.5.
I have 9. bastard.
Oh, you have it at 9?
He probably has it as a 4. He hates weather.
But like relative to your scale, it's probably the highest.
Yeah, I think this is similar to how Impulse was maybe top 5 in the division. I think Afonso is top 3, maybe top 2. I actually think this is a normal team disguised as a rain team, where like it has, to your point, Goater, where it can be matchup fishy for rain. I think it is more than serviceable to bring 6 Mons without rain in matchups where rain is bad.
True.
Like Mega Swampert doesn't really actually need rain. You just run it as regular Swampert. Archaludon outside of rain is more than fine. Thundy outside of rain, more than fine. As seen by Neon using Overquill last season. Overquill can just set up on its own and win.
Yeah.
True.
And you have
or just be a good
used yourself Ludicolo outside of rain as well. It is fine, I guess. Same as Kabutops, like they're fine. They're definitely just low tier mons, but
all right, you've convinced me. I'm raising it up to 8.4.
8.4.
I will say that like glancing at it, it doesn't really dispel the rain thing because you see a blue turtle. It's like then you realize it's like, okay, but the reality is that 2 out of the 5 top tiers are not rain team mons, and then one of them is one that can be used anywhere.
Yeah,
really only one of them is like strictly a rain team mon, and then the other one is like likes rain but can be good on other teams too. So I agree with that as well.
Oh, Valiant doesn't get Thunder. That's tragic.
That would be pretty cute. But yeah, even just looking at the top, let's even just say that there's like four mons that I bring that can be in rain and can like Valiant in rain doesn't make too much sense. It's just kind of a good mon, right?
Yeah.
So there are very clearly plans. There's very clearly plans to not rely on the rain all the time.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. So
I will say
between
I think
like Archaludon,
was 3. So like the rain did come first.
Yeah, Valiant rain
Pelipper
3.
And Archaludon.
Yeah, it was Archaludon, Pelipper, and then Iron Valiant, Terrapagos. So like, and those I think 3 out of those 4. I think Archaludon is it better in rain? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But it's more than serviceable outside of rain. Iron
I think
Valiant
it was drafted
has
as a splash, like at first.
Yeah.
So you see like the Archaludon with the Pelipper, like great, good combo. And then the rest of it, like let's make a solid team.
I'm viewing it as a rain team that has non-rain as a splash.
That's
I think it's fine to look at it like that. It's just you just have to.
It's good though. You convinced me that it doesn't need it to survive, and it's like it doesn't feel bad to not bring it. You're right.
Yeah. I agree that it is drafted as a rain team, but has. And so you could say it's a rain team with splashing other things, but the reality of the point spread is that most of the rain that makes it a rain team is lower tiers that aren't coming to every game. So you could reasonably not.
Oh, so it's a good match. Yeah, no. You're right.
Speaking of lower tiers, I think having Ludicolo as a Terra Captain over Overquill is a decision.
Does that work?
Was that a point thing?
Yeah, you could.
It adds up to 24 if you Terra Overquill.
You could do it like that.
You could even do like Thundy Overquill as well. Over Archaludon. I do think Archaludon is like very good as a captain.
Yeah,
so is Thundy.
Makes your team so much better defensively too.
Yeah, Archaludon's good as a Terra Captain for sure. It might be one of those ones that's like similar but different to like Lando, where when we're in the context of Terra Captains that you have 2 of and have a point limit on, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world that you're not using a really good Terra Captain when you're keeping a Steel Dragon type. But at the same time, it's still a really good Terra Captain. Like nobody's gonna. Yeah,
I'm gonna be real. I think we're sleeping on Archaludon. I think this mon is pretty bustaroni.
Oh, I do too. I'm not sleeping on it. I think that mon's insane. Here, what did I put this team at? I said 9
I'm definitely probably sleeping on it a little bit in the draft.
My reasoning for this was, so I said it's 9 out of 10 because it's a rain team in draft to a degree, which normally you'd say that the rain, like a weather gimmick team, is not going to be as good at draft. I think Archaludon fundamentally flips that on its head, because rain teams now, even on ladder, are so much less limited. And it's the same thing with sun teams with photosynthesis now. Like just Gen 9 just changed it so much where it's just like sun teams were better because chlorophyll was kind of like the counter option that like dealt with the normal things that deal with sun and fire. But now rain having like, okay, you have a dragon steel type that has a signature move that's a broken electric type move. Cool, that's 3 types completely unrelated to rain teams that are now a core part of your rain team. Now let's talk about how Archaludon is just a broken mon to begin with, and that just walls the common counters to it. So it's like common answers to Rain before, maybe like Rillaboom or a special attacking water type that's going to take advantage of the Rain and kind of flip it on them, right? Like those things don't work against AV Archaludon or just Archaludon in general if we're talking about like physical grass types that might bully a Mega Swampert or hit Pelipper neutrally as a flying type that might normally want to try and come in on it. I think Archaludon turns Rain teams into just, this is not limited by being a Rain team. And what we already talked about, which is that this already isn't limited by being a Rain team with these two mons. I think it just kind of builds it all together into like a really solid team that has one of the most threatening gimmick archetypes that you can run, but also is just a super solid threatening team outside of that gimmick.
I think we're simultaneously overhyping and underrating Archaludon, if that makes any sense.
Potentially, yeah. I think we're gonna find out this season. I think this is weirdly the only Archaludon drafted.
Sheesh.
But I think. Yeah, I'm going to be watching Afonso and specifically how he uses Terra Archaludon pretty closely.
Should be entertaining,
Yeah.
All right, well, time is up. Or do we have any final thoughts?
Tinkaton sucks.
True.
Good final thought.
Anorith the goat.
True.
Austin Matthews just scored 67 goals.
GG.
GG.
All right, I'm done. What's next?
Up, Glumlee.
Glumlee!
Let's hear from Lee first. We didn't get much of you on Afonso. What do you think of Glum?
I really like Glum's team. I think Tusk and Boulder are like a really, really terrifying 1-2 physical punch that you have to figure out how to wall. And then Coco Boulder's obviously one of the I don't know, boogeymen of the like electric terrain abusers that we have. And then Mandibuzz and Vaporeon and Mega Aggron is a terrifying defensive core as well, with a good mix of fast and slow pivots. I really like this team. I think this team's like a 9.
Yeah.
The only thing keeping it from like a 9.5 or a 10 to me is that I hate Hydrapple, but that's
I was going to say the same thing, dude. Oh, man. Yeah, no, I love this team. I also have it at 8.5. I think it's similarly good to Afonso's team, where like it has this electric terrain synergy with Boulder, but it's not reliant on it. I think Boulder's just so good. Although Toady, I think you and I have opposing opinions on Boulder.
So I think Boulder's a fraud. That being said, Boulder on electric terrain is different because it's bypassing one of the things that I think makes it a fraud, which is that if it's booster energy and you have a mon that still walls it before the Swords Dance and you force it to Swords Dance or like chip it down, it either has to swap out or just accept its death from a priority move later on. With electric terrain, it kind of bypasses that because it can keep coming back in with that boost. So I don't think it's as bad in Nat deck specifically with Coco as an option. I have the team overall at 7, but this is one that I looked at kind of briefly and I just said, oh wow, it's the same thing that I said in the True one, which is that you got Tapu Koko and you drafted one of the future Paradox mons, and it was Iron Boulder, which isn't bad. It's not the worst one to draft. I mean, it's probably the best one to draft actually. I would have liked to see another one. You know, like you have the electric terrain, just even if it's a low tier one, just put it on the team. But what else? Oh, the other thing I didn't like about it is I don't like Tusk as a Terra Captain. I think it's fine as a Terra Mon if we're talking about ladder. I don't think it's worth 19 points of your Terra value.
I think
of
that's
your
fair.
Terra budget.
Looking
to be
at
fair, these
the
two are
thought
banned.
process.
So
yeah, looking at the thought process of why Glumlee Terra
and this one can't.
the Great Tusk, I think it makes sense.
Yeah,
Because the
it
team
does make
went
sense.
Coco Tusk.
Yeah.
And then I don't think I think most of the okay, not most of it. If you get to this point and you're getting to your third pick, you're probably just picking between Iron Moth and Iron Boulder at that point. And Boulder is
Yeah.
Terra banned. So you could say, I'm just gonna pick whichever I want, got Boulder, and then ended up picking a defensive core, picking more offensive mons, and by the time you get to the bottom of the draft, where his second last pick is Ogerpon Hearthflame, which incidentally also can't Terra.
Yeah.
I think like the Tusk in the situation that he was put in, not knowing what his team's Terra captain situation would look like down the line, was like I think that the decision to Terra Tusk there was fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that now that I'm
makes sense.
looking at the rest of the team, because you don't really need Terra Mandibuzz or Vaporeon. Maybe Terra Hydrapple, but then who do you pair it with? Unless you're literally doing 13 points of Terra.
Yeah.
But maybe Coco instead of Tusk. I don't know. Coco's also the only fairy type here, and Coco's not really kind of one of the fake fairies that we talked about.
Yeah, I think Coco it's partly. I think it's a better fairy type than like Enamorus and Mega Diancie. In that, like, it's just so fast that it can often afford to be bulkier. And it's in matchups where the opponent doesn't have a 130 mon. Iron Boulder is still going to be the fastest thing in the game, like in the battle, if Coco is bulky, right?
What do you think about this?
And it does have reliable recovery with Roost and like Taunt and a lot of tools to keep itself safe. So it's definitely more real than some of the other high tier offensive fairies, in my opinion.
Yeah, my concern with it as a fairy though is that it's like it has when you're relying on terrain for stuff or relying on it for speed, which I guess he's not with Boulder existing. You don't necessarily want to risk bringing it in on some things that have a chance to kill it. Like maybe we're talking about Garchomp, or maybe we're talking about something else that's like the dragon type that you're worried about also has Quake or something that it doesn't want to come in on. Like it might be risky. You might end up losing it in a place that you don't want to lose it because it was the mon that you had to bring in there. But I agree, yeah, with the Roost and being able to run bulkier, that's less of a problem for it. What do you think of these speed tiers? I just kind of noticed though, because we have a pretty sharp drop off from Ogerpon down to what is it, 87?
I think it's fine.
I guess Tusk is fine.
I don't think the drop off and the gap there matters too much.
I think Tusk is
because we're not
threatening enough to have to be running speed.
Yeah.
Where the 90s and 95s will have to creep it.
Mm-hmm.
If it just went down to Mandibuzz, I would say that's a really big problem. But I think Tusk is worthy of creeping, at least Adamant Tusk, right? So I don't think it's the end of the world. I do really like the layering of the 130, the 124, and then the 110. I think that's really good.
Maybe the downside with the 110 not being able to Scarf, though.
That's true. That's true, because you never want to Scarf Boulder, but do you ever need to Scarf?
Yeah, you can just terrain. You have to terrain, you don't need to Scarf it.
Yeah. You don't need to Scarf Boulder. And you can Trailblaze with Ogerpon too. I'm just saying, if from a standpoint, like sometimes when I'm seeing some of these speed tiers are they just outclass so many things. Less true in Nat decks, I guess. But they just outclass so many things. That's like these kinds of mons draw out Scarfs from me. And when you're like kind of middle check mon for those higher speed tiers, can't also Scarf to check that, maybe we're talking about like 105 or even just base 100, like very common kind of Scarf candidates for that sort of thing. It's a little tough if you have to decide here, but yeah, you're right. Like with the proto or with the Quark Drive and the electric terrain, you kind of do have a Scarf with Boulder, at least to check that.
Yeah. Some final thoughts I have are the team with the Ogerpon doesn't want to defog because of the electric terrain with Boulder. I don't think it's the end of the world when your terrain goes down. So because of that, I feel like it's going to be reliant on Tusk spinning, which having it as a Terra Captain to spin does feel a little bad, which is kind of my thought process just on Tusk as a Terra Captain in general. But it's not going to be the end of the world if Mandy has to come in and defog for Tusk. Coco can just come back in later and you can try and run a terrain extender.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important for Pawn to have the removal. There are 3 removal options, to be clear. So technically 4 with Mr. Mime.
I have the team in at 8. I haven't revealed my score yet. A lot of the points why were covered already. I feel like the tight matchups on this team can be leveraged against a bit more than other teams. And also just really specially is underwhelming.
Yeah, that's true. There's like Coco, Hydrapple, Vaporeon is the special offense. That's pretty bad. And Nasty Plot Mandibuzz with 55 special attack. Awesome.
And if our justification for Coco being the fairy is that it can run bulky, And that's one of your
Yeah, it's even
3
weaker.
special.
Okay, I mean, Coco is the only real fighting resist. Also didn't sit too well with me, but
True.
it still is, and it won its game this week, right? I believe it's a scary team that can win pretty handily. So it's not.
I agree.
It doesn't need those things that.
Wow, wait,
This
that's
is definitely
right.
the team. This is
Right,
definitely
right.
the team that's saying you're gonna play by my rules, and I'm gonna beat you at my game, rather than trying to play your game.
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't
agree.
notice that,
So
that
let's,
all the normal fighting resists are neutral though, because of that.
Yeah, that's true. So let's move on to Lucnukem.
Luke.
And as we do that, I'll actually be right back. But I guess
I think Luke was in the chat.
whoever wants to lead us off here.
Let me see what I have.
Okay, so I just changed the score for this team.
Great, and I'll be
I
back.
looked at it. I have this team at a 9.7. It's my favorite team. Once again, Luke has drafted my favorite team out of Swarm. I'm hoping that he doesn't ruin it and pick up trade-ins again. Literally, the only thing I really have a problem with this team is the fact that Toad School's a Terra captain. Yeah, and that's it. You got
I mean,
a bunch of solid mons. Roaring Moon and Darmgalar and Iron Moth are all scary win conditions. Iron Moth with Agility Meteor Beam is a set. Calling it now. I want to see it once. Hard to break this team. It's good, and then there's also a Toad School, which is good. You can bring that to a game, maybe not with this team because a lot of the you just bring Swampert or Corviknight. I've seen it brought by Nahaima a lot, but taking the Terra slot feels bad, even though it's like the only feasible option with the Moth you drafted. I probably would have made Mega Stabilize something else lower and had 2 lower point mons so you can get a better Terra captain, but I don't know if that's any better. I don't know what's available in Swarm. I don't know. Really good team. Can do everything really well. Roaring Moon and Darmgalar, Iron Moth, really scary win conditions with the pivots to support them. And type chart's really good.
I said 8 out of 10, and I realized like reading my note that I completely missed something. Because I said a lot of neat mons, and I said it's a good defensive core, but not overly reliant on it. Like on it being a defensive core. So like Corviknight obviously is always going to be defensive, but you have Wash and Screamtail who are both very flexible. Maybe Screamtail's not like flexible to be an offensive mon, but flexible in speed. So you still have to predict its set, and Rotom's obviously very famously you have to predict its set because it can do so many things. The extra note that I had, which is like I realize now that I'm looking at that we have freaking Iron Moth on here, but I had said that it might be a little too physical focused in forcing Rotom to be a more offensive set often, which could still be true. Matchups where Moth isn't great, Terra Moth can circumvent that a little bit, but in matchups where Moth isn't great, or maybe there's a risk that Moth could kind of get screwed over early on, you're not really putting out any special offense besides Moth, and if Rotom's running special offense.
To talk more about that point, I think Rotom Wash is well supported to do that. Like a lot of what Rotom Wash wants to do defensively, another mon on the roster can sort of take that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's
Right?
why. That's why I don't think it's like a huge negative, and why it's nice that these mons are flexible. And I think really the point doesn't really matter anymore now that I noticed the Iron Moth. But I just kind of looked past it when I was looking at like, okay, we got Moon who comes in and clicks a big physical button, Garm who comes in and clicks a big physical button, and then nobody else really does anything else. So, but yeah, no, Moth is definitely makes that easier. There's not all the pressure on Rotom to always do that, and he's free to do it when he wants to, but he doesn't have to.
Luke's also a Screamtail vet, I believe. I think he drafted it last season. I'm not sure.
I think he did.
I think he did too.
I know this isn't his first time with Screamtail.
Yeah, I think he drafted Screamtail last season, so he knows how to use it. I saw him pop off once with like bulky setup sets.
Yeah.
So he's willing to do fun stuff with that mon, which makes it even more, worth the point value. Scary. And I feel like he's also willing to do that with. I think he's willing to run like setup Corviknight at least once. I think he's crazy enough to do that. We saw it in the. If anyone was part of the PGA last season, the Corviknight was on the leaderboard because it just kept running setup for. That was Paldea Dex, but yeah, I think he's willing to run that, and he's definitely going to be running setup Screamtail at least once for sure, maybe twice.
I'm back.
He's a vet of the mon. He feels comfortable with it. His crutch.
Alright, we still on Luke?
He did. Actually, yeah, no, he did draft. Oh, I was looking. He did draft it. Yeah, last season.
Did we read what Luke said in chat?
Moon was originally going to be Como. Ah.
So I will just say, sorry, I'm not too sure what you guys mentioned, but my 2 cents here is I freaking love Toad School. It's so cool, but also
That's the opposite of what Gator said.
I do think almost the entirety of this team's offense is very, like, I guess you could say predictable. It's fairly one-dimensional, right?
That's true.
And it's banking on the opponent just not having answers for it. And it's not like the Rain team, where not having an answer for like Ludicolo, or sorry, if the opponent has an answer for Ludicolo, it's not the end of the world, right? If the opponent has an answer for Darm Galar, you don't bring one of your top mons. Or one of your top mons doesn't have a very strong impact on the game, right? So because of how top-heavy it is with very linear mons, regardless of the fact that the linear mons are good at being linear, I think it can lead to you losing matchups you wouldn't need to be losing otherwise. I don't know if this is making too much sense.
No, it makes sense.
Okay. I like the defensive core of Corv Rotom. Ideally, you would want a non-water ground type. So I'm not a huge fan of the Swampert with the Rotom. But I like the Screamtail. I think Screamtail Corv is very strong.
Swampert's fine. I don't. Yeah, now thinking about it more and more on that point, what could struggle this team. I'm thinking of steel types. This team might have a hard time breaking. And then I'm thinking about this team has so much removal. Mega Sableye. I don't know what that's doing on this team.
I think Sableye is cool. I
think it's cool, but I think that could be a fighting type maybe to check steel types better.
That's fair. It could definitely be an alternative. Whenever I see Mega Sableye, I go, yeah, it could work.
It never does.
Yeah, true. It usually doesn't, but
to the point with the water ground type, I also noticed that and said okay, well we have the defensive, the Rotom whose only weakness is grass, and then you have him on that's 4 times weak to grass. But then you look and you see Corviknight bodies most grass types, and anything that Corviknight doesn't body, Moth is still a 4 times resist before it, Terra, so not that it wants to be a swap for it, but it's still threatening there. You don't want to just commit to a choice grass type move against this team, because maybe that brings Moth in to do something. And even beyond that, you have Garm to just shatter them defensively, the grass types. So it's I think I see what you're saying with that, and I would sort of agree. Maybe you do a different option here, but I don't think it's as bad as it looks having.
I'm not even considering Swampert as a water type when I look at this team. It's a ground type that just happens to not be weak to ice, which is a plus.
That is fair. Yeah, having Rotom I think does. Maybe there's less overlap than I thought, considering the fact that just having Corv there for the grass types that those two are weak to is actually pretty good.
Yeah, Corv.
It's just 2 water types that aren't weak to electric, but also a ground type that isn't weak to ice. Yeah, I don't hate it. I think that's a fair assessment. I do think Corv and Rotom are under a lot of pressure to remove, just on the basis that two of the 3 top heavy linear mons are 25% rock weak.
That's true.
This team has a high ceiling.
Yeah, it does have a high ceiling.
Sure.
You're right. If there was better spike stacking, I would say having the opponent forced to defog into you is ideal. But you're not bringing Toad School very often, so your only hazard is rocks. Effectively. I still think the team is good. Just to clarify, I had the team at a 7. I probably was thinking closer to 6.5 to 7, but
this is awkward.
But just based on the fact that it's I think it's more matchup fishy than the Rain team.
Interesting.
I can see. Yeah, no, I had this at a 9.7.
Wow.
That's my favorite team.
Interesting. I do think it looks fairly easy to pilot, and I think that is an actual metric that you can use to improve a team's point score.
Yeah.
Because you're less likely to screw it up. And over the course of a full season, if your team is difficult to pilot, you just need to be better to get the same results as somebody who's maybe worse than you but has an easier to pilot team.
Yeah.
So I think as somebody who's maybe trying to prove themselves to either stay in Swarm or to be promoted, I think this is a pretty good team to just get a good record, make it to playoffs, and try and make a playoff run, which is honestly going to be your best bet at promotion.
I know Luke's a golfer. Your team is a forgiving driver.
I don't know how we're doing on timer. Sorry, I was away for a few
It
minutes.
is well past, but I figured since
Okay.
you got up first.
Lee didn't say much
Yeah,
for team. What'd you give it out of 10, Lee? Forget.
I gave it an 8 out of 10 because the breakers are really hard to. They're hard to wall even by their checks like these. Like
Yeah.
Darmanitan are Terraban for a reason because they
Yeah.
kill their resists. I can't rate the Screamtail too high personally. I would have liked a better hazard stacking than just Screamtail and Swampert, and I think fitting rocks on Screamtail might be tough if it's going to be filling the defensive role that it needs to, unless you want to run no attacks on it, which it can do, I guess, but I'm not the biggest fan of.
Hey, at least if it's running rocks, it's probably not running bulk up and Calm Mind, right, Lee?
Please, I hope not.
Anyway, okay, let's. Yeah, that's a good analysis. I think it's time to move on to Metro.
Metroshock.
And Metro just you actually just played Metro. Now, spoiler alert, you did lose the game to the Terra Mesprit mostly. But other than Mesprit and Mystical Power just being a problem for your team, what do you think about this team in generally?
I think this team has a lot of really good hard hitters that really benefit from sitting behind Regieleki screens and Bulu terrain. Melmetal and Mamoswine are demons to prep for, and I think Mamoswine is a really good Terra captain, as well as Mesprit. The whole Lake Guardian trio has been proving themselves to be great Terra captains over the last 2 seasons. I like the Firewater Grass Core, Abulu, Primarina, and Moltres. It is quite poison weak, but Melmetal kind of dares you to click poison. Yeah. Melmetal and Garchomp kind of dare you to click poison attacks.
Yeah, true.
So I think it makes up for it that way. But the raw bulk of those 3 is very annoying to figure out how to break. From what I was working with when we were doing our prep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Is it poison weak? I think you mentioned it also doesn't have a poison type itself.
True.
Which makes it susceptible to T-Spikes, I think, which is something I haven't, going against the team.
Yeah, I do think Grassy Terrain sometimes offsets that, though. Obviously, it's not like a 1-to-1, but it does make
fair.
the weakness less, yeah.
I'll also say that like Moltres can come in on it and defog it without getting the poison. And obviously,
yeah, we can play around that, but it's still
really care about it either. Like if there's a T-Spike setter, and like let's say you got rid of T-Spike somewhere earlier in the game, or for some other reason you know for a fact that they're clicking T-Spikes there, Melmetal has kind of no downside to coming in on the second layer of T-Spikes because not getting touched by the first layer, and if they're going for that second layer, cool, you just got a free Melmetal coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're just describing steel
types.
Yeah.
No,
if it
but
was a poison
I'm
type,
saying
it would just
Melmetal...
remove the hazard, though, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's the point.
I'm saying Melmetal specifically is the kind of one that you don't want to just give that free turn to come in.
Yeah, that's fair. It is like the premier steel type that can punish that.
Yeah.
If your opponent chooses to be greedy, then you can punish them for sure.
Yeah.
But also, it's not much of a surprise that the flying type defogger doesn't get poisoned by them either. But the point of having a grounded poison type in the first place is to not even have to bring in your flying type to spend the turn. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm just saying that at least it's not like having Tusk or having Dawn Fan or something else that's like has to run boots if you want to be able to get rid of T-Spikes in a bad matchup.
Yeah,
so,
that's very true.
One of the
very first things I noticed. Yeah, it's still running boots, honestly.
Yeah.
The very first thing I noticed with the Bulu team is the Garchomp on it. I think that's kind of just the elephant in the room here.
Actually, the elephant in the room is Mamoswine.
It is something that's, I guess you could say, easy to fix. but
He's
easy
ignoring
to
us.
fix, as in you either have to drop Bulu or drop Garchomp to fix it, which does really feel bad. So
Yeah.
it's a fix that like you could make very easily and just get something, but like what substitutes Garchomp, right? So you probably sub for
Mega
the
Garchomp.
Bulu, but Bulu looks pretty decent on the team with the grassy terrain for Melmetal.
Mhm.
So it's like it's in this weird. Just for context, I rated this team 7.5. Because it's like it looks like a good team. You look at the top two of Melmetal Garchomp, and you're like, damn, what team with Melmetal Garchomp could possibly be bad? And then
This
you look
team.
and it's like, oh, it has Mega Pidgeot and Regieleki and grassy terrain on with Garchomp, and like a couple, like I don't know, things that I'm personally not big fans of, and a very clear anti-synergy. And it's like, yeah, this is pretty close to the worst direction you could have taken the Garchomp Melmetal team, in my solemn opinion. But
It's all-
like it is 9 good Mons with 2 good Terra Captains, a Garchomp, and a Melmetal. Like you
Yeah.
can't really go wrong with it.
I feel like the team was built with Melmetal in mind, and like those anti-synergies were just kind of forgotten along the
Yeah.
way. Like this is good with Metal, this is good with Melmetal. Oh, those aren't good together. Whoops.
Yeah, that's.
And I don't think you can
precisely
really
what it
fix
was.
this too much. But I mean, you still have a bunch of good Mons.
Yeah.
So one of the
Chomp
things
does have Stomping Tantrum. It does have Earth Power. But again, these are things that I feel like you're not getting 20 points of value out of Garchomp that can't run Earthquake. You know.
So one of the
I would just say though that if we're talking about like 20 points of value though, I'm not really concerned about getting 20 points of value out of Garchomp on this team. Like I feel like you're getting your point value on the rest of the team anyway. That I don't think is a huge deal, and just based on some of the discussions that I was having with her too, it's like Bulu's a great mon to have on this team for a lot of reasons, but also like there's enough good mons here that if you really need to run like a super threatening offensive Chomp with Quake, that like Stomping Tantrum just doesn't get the job done, or you can't just run a special set on it, then you just don't bring Bulu, and it's like not really that bad.
Yeah, I mean that is fair. I feel like saying if you want your top tier to do things that it always does, then you can't bring one of your high tiers. That does feel pretty bad. You can run telepathy. Telepathy is technically legal. But like then you're just losing value on your Bulu. And it's not actually
what is
Bulu,
that?
then it's just like
Wait.
Whimsicott at that point.
Oh, you mean the other ability for Bulu?
Yeah, telepathy over Grassy
I
Surge.
hear you saying something about like Garchomp telepathy.
No.
one thing I just thought about is with all the high horsepower Stomping Tantrums abusers instead of Earth Power users, Rocky Helmet that people are going to bring for Melmetal gets more value because I think those moves say contact.
That's true.
Oh, true.
Yeah,
high horsepower does. I don't remember about Stomping Tantrum.
I think Stomping Tantrum definitely does too.
It does, okay.
I believe you.
I remember my Muguses with Stomping Tantrum taking Rocky Helmet chip and going, what the hell?
Fair.
Yeah, that's
I
actually
think
a good
closing
point.
remarks. Closing
8
remarks. I think
8.5.
Cool. Yeah, I think. What did I say? 7.5? 7?
Yeah,
One
something
of those
like
two. I don't remember. I think putting it somewhere between the, even if we just average ours out and say it's a 7.5 to 8, we'll say it's 7.75. I think it's a good team. There's so many good mons. Terra Mesprit is like really good. What are you saying? Hold on for it.
You forgot to calculate my score into the average.
Is it 11?
I said 1 out of 10.
Okay, so actually, sorry, Metro, this team sucks.
So
It's out of
It's probably the
6.9.
worst in the division. 6.9 out of
Yeah.
100.
Nice.
yeah, so
I think there's a lot. Honestly, I was kind of harping on Mega Pidgeot. It is decent. I
like
think
Mega
it's
Pidgeot.
like I think it gets a little bit too much flack considering it's like just a low tier Mega. But
I don't give a flack. I've always liked it.
don't care.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
On to the next
Mega
roster.
Pidgeot.
Yeah. On to the next. All right. Where are we at? We got Corey.
Corbett.
Corey drafting Rillaboom Terrain again?
Wow.
Seen him draft this
No
twice in a row.
way.
Not in this league, but I've seen him drafted twice in a row. Leagues that I've been in.
I said this one. What did I say? I said 6 out of 10.
I said 8.
So I'll talk about this one.
You'll
I
start?
didn't
You'll
give my
start?
score for the last one until the end. So I'll go first for this one.
Okay.
So 6 out of 10. I said Rilla Sneasler's sick. Like we know that combo is good. Goldango is a fuck you mon, but also a good mon, and definitely enjoys
Demonetized.
the grassy terrain. True. Ogerpon is busted because it's Ogerpon. Like we know this mon's broken too. What I said for the negative zone, why it's kind of a little lower, is I said it's a little bit of a rough hazard game for having Arcanine, who's going to be weak to rocks. And I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure there's no ground immunity here. It's just the terrain, which doesn't really help as much with high horsepower and headlong rush and earth power and all of that stuff that we kind of just talked about in the last team being the things that get around grassy terrain. It ends up kind of feeling like almost like a cheese matchup check. Like, hey, did you know that Earthquake gets cut in half by grassy terrain?
Yeah,
if
yes,
check. Then no. If yes, then you're fine. But then
I think you need a ground immunity.
No, then it cuts it in half. But it's still a major thing. Like, I have won games because somebody built their team against like my Rillaboom team or something, and they just brought Quake in because they just didn't know. And it's a massive game changer, and it really benefits. It's skewed so much by the knowledge check. Like,
are you just harping on the team for not having a flying type or levitate month? Because there is terrain plus 2 grass types. That seems pretty good to me.
Levitate.
I was actually gonna say, I think Terra Waterpon in grassy terrain is actually like so threatening.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
You know, doubling down on the water type. Obviously, it has to Terra Water, but making the water stronger and the grass stronger, both of the stabs. And honestly, it only really needs to run those 2 types and sometimes play rough for dragon types. I think that's really, really threatening, and I'm really interested to see how it plays. Actually, utility pawn is probably going to be fine, but I think we're going to see this mostly in an offensive role.
Yeah, this team
and just hit shit with like grassy terrain, power whip, or woodhammer or whatever. That's another thing.
Weird for that.
Yeah, that's another thing. Is it can more reliably run woodhammer over power whip since it gets some of the recovery back, which is really nice for it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Terra Regidrago, if it's just like a steel type in terrain, and just gets up multiple dragon dances, I think that's also really good.
Nice.
So,
I didn't really look at it
for the record, I have this at an 8 as well. I think you had it at 8 too.
Yeah.
And
it's actually kind of crazy that I just noticed. Just quick side note: the lowest point value mon on this team is 9.
Yeah. So it is very spread across the board. It almost looks like where'd you get all these mons from, right?
Yeah.
Which is a good sign for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to compare this to Kai Guy's team from Truant, where he had grassy terrain Sneasler as well. But didn't have I don't remember exactly what he didn't have. But it looked like he was lacking in some like firepower, with relying on Sneasler to be the main win con with like no hazards, and looked like potentially Sneasler would maybe fail to get like Okos on things, since they'll always be like high HP. But I mean, you have a couple hazard setters here with Tenta and Arcanine. You have Rillaboom to actually pivot into things, as opposed to the Bulu that Kai Guy had.
Flip turn Tentacruel too is now a thing.
Yeah, true. Right? Flip turn, true. So there's a lot more pivoting going on in the team, and also if you run the Unburdened Sneasler, you don't have to worry about your speed being awful like Kai Guy did. Because you have the Alakazam and you have the Water Pond, right?
Yeah.
And also Kangaskhan if you want to count that, and Tentacruel is fast. So I think there's a lot of options here, and I really liked Kai Guy's team. I do think it was partly based on the fact that there was a Snow Splash, and there's no Snow Splash here, obviously, but a lot of this team really appreciates the grassy healing, and I don't think it will struggle to get KOs as much as Kai Guy's team will. So I really like this team in the context of Swarm, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll say go ahead.
I'll say I have the 8. I think it's a team that Corey's very comfortable with. Mm-hmm. He's playing with mons that he likes. He likes Sneasler. He likes Rillaboom. It's the second time he's drafted Mega Kang. This playstyle is super comfortable with him. So it's going to be scary. He proved last season. He also drafted the same, offensive. I'm going to just disregard really defensive synergies, and I'm going to just hit you harder than you can hit me.
True.
And he finished tied for first by like Like
True.
I think it was like either one differential or 3 tiebreakers into a tied differential.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy.
Corey's
So
really
it-
trying to make a case to get back into hustle.
So like it's almost like I'd give the roster an 8, but if Corey's driving it, I'd like to give it a 10. Like
True. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I think all the mods
go ahead.
definitely benefit from grassy terrain. So I'm not saying that grassy terrain without the ground immunity is bad for any of these mods because they all like it. I was just pointing out that it's still good to also have that, like
there are 2 resists, so it's really not the end of the world.
Metro and chat. Yeah, that's what we figured out with your team, dude.
True.
Yeah.
Oh, true. I wasn't reading up on what Metro was saying. All my mods are just like good points. I don't know what happened. Yeah,
because she was pointing out that her lowest is 10 because I said this one's 9, but I think the difference is that Metro's team sucks. So
yeah.
But she's the
By the way,
goat.
Chomp got onto the team because Corey sniped Rilla.
Ah.
Oh, true.
But she's the Melmetal goat. She'll be fine.
True. Okay, let's maybe hear Lee. You have any thoughts on this, and then we can move on to our next team.
Yeah, timer just
my
went
notes
down, so
are Ogre Punning Grassy Terrain looks way too good.
Yeah.
Tentacruel's your only remover, which can be tough, but you want spinners more than defoggers. And Wear Hazard stack.
I don't think he's gonna remove anything. He's just gonna leave it there. And
No, he's gonna his removal is removing the opponent's Pokemon from the game. So
the greatest form of crowd control.
I'm all for it. Like he's gonna click. We know Corey's a button clicker. He's gonna click buttons that kill Pokemon, and it's gonna be fun to watch.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
If you
All right,
don't,
let's
if
move
you
on
don't
to-
click
Anyways, I
into
also have it
that
as an eight.
game, if you don't click into one of Corey's games, like in the first couple seconds that the link is posted, you'll probably miss most of it.
You missed the game, yeah. Okay, moving on to Dark FE. Is this team salvageable?
I think this team is definitely unsalvageable. Unfortunately, really,
Yeah.
I think Dark FG should have waited on Bro, but the people wanted it, and honestly, it was too good for them to pass up. I heard reports that they stared at their monitor for like 2 hours, and there was no sequence and results that found anything playable. I don't think they're too invested or concerned that much, and unfortunately, they're forced to take a spot in Swarm from someone like Alamir, who definitely wants to be here more. Not a playable roster. Total buy every week. Alas.
Unfortunate. Unplayable out of 10. Anyway, moving on. No.
No. Roster's fine. I have it at a 8.5.
Yeah, I like the team. I have it at an 8 as well. I do think there was something that we pointed out for the team. I don't remember what it was. Oh, that there's no flying resist on the team with like the rock type and the steel type both don't resist flying. Which does feel kind of bad, but it's also not particularly weak to flying, and you can always just slap Slowbro in front of the Bravebird user and slap Clefable in front of the Hurricane user. And
it's not
usually
fair in front of either. It's like it's got the stats to check it anyway, even though there's nothing that resists it.
Yeah, Dark FE in chat says least favorite draft of the few I've done, but it could be worse. No natural second ground type with Megachomp is annoying. I actually agree.
Yeah, you're someone that does that a lot.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the fact that Megachomp doesn't want to be the only ground type. So I actually agree with you there. But Ferrothorn is a fraud in Nat decks with Mystical Fire distribution. I think that's kind of cap. You have Slowbro, you have a regen core. If somebody tries to throw a non-stab Mystical Fire on your to beat your Ferrothorn, you're healing up with the rest of your team on the switch. Assuming you know what gets Mystical Fire, and if you're saying this, I assume you do. And you have a Flash Fire Chandelier, so I don't think it's I don't think it's a problem.
Really risk clicking it.
It's a good point to bring up though, because if we're talking about salvaging an unsalvageable draft, I think that bringing Wigglytuff onto this team as a counter to the
hold on.
Anyway,
Chameko is goated. I believe in that mon. It does so much for its point value. Yeah, nothing offensively, but
no. Like
all amazing utility.
Knockoff T-Wave. Yeah, it's sweet. Real problem is Weiser or Cyclizar. I agree, and funny enough, this is the second team that we've now seen Torn T and Cyclizar on the same team.
Like I get it. I get it because you're taking pressure off of. It's like the double ground sort of thing, right? You're taking pressure off Torn to do the defensive, boring Torn things. But at the same time, that means you need to bring Cyclizar, which, to Monkey's point, feels bad.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I don't like Cyclozar, but I see why it makes sense in this context.
Yeah, I guess. I do think the first 5 you drafted from like Torn, so just in draft order rather, it was Torn, Slowbro, Chomp, Clefable, Pharaoh. It already had the makings. Actually, even just by the time you went to Clefable, I think it had the makings of, hey, this is just a team that wants a Steel type, potentially one that has rocks, and you're off to a great start with like a good balance core, flexible defenses, and I don't know. I don't think it is anywhere near as bad as maybe you thought. I do think you're definitely just more defeatist than Max is a fraud. Okay, more defeatist than maybe you should be, but
I like the team.
Yeah.
I don't like the Edgequaker flying matchup, but again, we talked about the stats that sort of help circumvent that. It almost, as someone who didn't play Pokemon competitively in Gen 6, it gives me big Gen 6 vibes. If that makes any sense.
Yep, it's very Gen 6y.
Any thoughts, Lee?
You
had
I like the regenerator.
Regenerator
core. I like Terrakion a lot. Terra Terrakion is terrifying. I don't think I want to figure out how to play against it, and I'm going to have to as a gate.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna slam.
Yeah.
But it has to hit the attack though.
You can just slam CC. You can't miss those. Ghost type.
I think figuring out how to set up in front of things to beat this team is going to be tough because everything kind of exerts pressure in its own way, and it just has built-in longevity with the Clefable recovery and 2 of your first 2 picks being 2 of the best regenerators in the format.
Dark says that they peaked in XYOU, so you're playing with your comfort zone here.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You got this.
I think that's a boon for you too. So I expect this team to do well. I think maybe you just need to get out of your own head and realize that your team is pretty decent. But honestly, at the end of the day, if you don't want to play, don't force yourself to play. We can figure it out. Just let me know, keep in contact. And yeah. I don't know, the team looks great. 8 out of 10.
I think it was 8.5? Yeah, I was 8.5.
Alright. Next team.
Ira.
The one that goes by many names. Ira, Stella, whatever was before Ira that I forget.
Alright, who wants to take us off here?
I didn't really say a whole lot on the last one, so I can go ahead.
Go for it.
Let's see. So okay, this one was actually one of I shouldn't have volunteered. This is one of the more glance ones because I noticed something right away that I just kind of hyper fixated on.
Great.
So, I was looking at in the draft order, so like it looks a little different on here. But in the first 5 picks, Ira drafted 2 fighting types and 2 fire types.
This is true.
Which I thought was interesting. I don't know if that's like inherently a bad thing, but it's kind of similar to what I said in one of the first ones, whereas like I see 2 poison types. I don't know if those 2 poison types are bad together, but surely there's something else that could have been drafted besides 2 poison types. And that's kind of where I'm at with this, where it's like, I guess part of it is that Keldeo is like, at least for me, I think of as a water type before a fighting type. And even Lop, I think of as a normal type before a fighting type. So like maybe those 2 overlapping is like less intentional or more of like a just kind of like, hey, it's there, it's whatever. My concern is that, especially for like fighting, having only, I mean, you have 2 flying resists technically, but like Rotom with Pain Split it can survive a little bit, but like Rotom Heat especially, who wants to be running boots a lot of the time, is not really a mon that you want to be straining too much to be a definitive defensive answer for a lot of things. It can be good in like those couple like 1v1s that you just always put it in for, but you don't want it to be kind of like a blanket answer for something that your team might be a little broadly weak to. And so I'm concerned that Jirachi might end up having too much of that strain to be a Wish Protect or like just a defensive mon kind of 100% of the time and not be able to use its flexibility to what it can kind of achieve. And the same kind of goes for the fire types being limiting.
Where's Sylvie on there to do that?
I'm concerned, but it's not for the Jirachi. I think Lando is under so much pressure to be utility mon here. We can't take full advantage of the Terra.
That's
because very limited hazards with the Jirachi and the Lando, but also only one other defogger and Rodent Heat. So it's like you're kind of really forced to run those two mons doing those two things and then playing into the offensive Lando, or just running an I'll check all your bases utility Lando, which I think will come to a lot of games.
Yeah.
And then with that, it's like the same issue we found Nahaima had with Luke's team, where you're having your two offensive threats, Caldio and Lopunny. They both have to be fighting types. That's easier to deal with than Luke's team. So this team might, and even Cerule Edge, it's like some physical mons can check both Lopunny and Cerule Edge.
I think if you're running Cerulege with another fire type, and that fire type is your that other fire type is your main defogger, so you're always running boots on it for the most part. That kind of means that for the most part you're running boots Cerulege too, and it's not a Terra Captain, so it's like always fire type. I think if you draft Cerulege in this situation, it should always be your Terra Captain.
Mm-hmm. That's a good I think it is, and I don't think this team lends itself much to Lando Terra. I still think it's good.
There are other good options here too.
Zorak as a Terra Captain is very funny, and I like it.
I don't have a problem with that.
It's the mind games plus bonus mind games. Is this any mon can be the Terra Captain now?
Well, the downside is that I think it still shows the Terra type if you come back in later.
But it's like the preamble.
Yeah, it'd just be
like I just got hit with a Terra Blast from this Mega Lopunny. Whoops.
Just off the top of my head, like looking at things that might work. Oh, actually, you know what? Because you can't do 213s. I was going to say Cerulege and Sylveon would be good, but you can't do those two together.
Yeah. So you'd have to make a trade for it. I don't think Zorak is a bad captain, for the record. I think I just don't think Lando has the capacity on this team to be the Terra Captain. And if you have Cerulege, I think it either Cerulege needs to drop, or it should be the captain, and something like Zoroark plus Sceptile should be turned into a 12-point to captain with it kind of thing, is my 2 cents on that.
I had this team as an 8, but I'm leaning towards moving it lower. No poison T-Spike Absorber. And then also, it's really weak to water Pokemon.
I was going to say the exact same thing. The water switch-in is Keldeo.
And which is often walled a lot of the case by water types.
Yeah.
It's checks, so water types are kind of free against this team. Jirachi too. There is a Sceptile, but that's like the 7-point Sceptile mon.
Yeah.
You don't want to bring that more than 3 times a season at the most.
I'll also say with Cerulege, like one of the scariest sets for Cerulege is Focus Sash. And this team is baiting rocks so hard that you're gonna lose a lot of those opportunities to bring in the Focus Sash Cerulege. Unless
when you say baiting rocks, do you mean
I'm saying on Team Builder? Like you're looking at this team and say, "Oh, Rocks looks pretty good against this team," because of the 2 fire types.
I mean, I see double fighting type. I see Jirachi.
I'm more just looking at specifically when I personally see 2.
He sees double fires and his eyes light up. Stealth rocks.
Yeah, actually though, and Lando as much as he's a flying type that's not weak to rocks, he's also a ground type that's not resistant to rocks. So, how many times does he want to come in and do that when he's one of the only hazard removal on the team?
See, I think I actually have the opposite perspective of you, looking at when rocks are good in a matchup. I don't look at when there's a lot of things weak to rocks, because those things are running boots, right? I don't want to have to position myself where I have to remove boots on the things that I brought rocks for in order for them to do work. I look at more is how many things resist these rocks, and if there's not very many, then rocks are good, because you're not bringing boots on very often on something that just takes 12.5 from the boots, right? So it actually on average will be getting more mileage against the mons that it's neutral against, unless you're in the case of versus Luke, who has the Darm Galar, for example. That's a different case.
Yeah, where it's not running boots. But I think Cerulege is a similar example to Darm Galar, where it's I think its best sets when it's not a Terra Captain are ones that it doesn't want to be running boots for, because it would rather be running Focus Sash.
I think Sash in draft is inconsistent.
Well, another thing with Cerulege and Nat deck specifically too is Pursuit's a thing now. So running a set that you want, like that you maybe want to be swapping out on, instead of a set where it's like, hey, I'm in and you have to deal with me, which is the focus set or the focus band, wow, focus sash set. I think that's one where it's like you want to be the person in charge there, and not being the one that's being pressured to swap out.
But see, that's why it would be a good captain.
Yeah, no, I agree. It would be a good captain. I'm saying that that's just one downside of Cerulege, that like maybe if you see Cerulege pop off in non-Nat Dex games, which I have, that's a big thing to remember, is that Pursuit is a thing in Nat Dex, and somebody might not necessarily consider that. Where it's like now we have a couple compounding weaknesses, and then it's also asterisk not even as good as it is in Peldex. So.
Yeah, that's fair. Metro and Dark in chat are saying Bramble is open as a potential captain with Lando.
Where's
I don't know if that fixes any of the issues though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe
I mean,
because then if you're dropping Sceptile for it, and then maybe are you changing Cerulege for a 15-pointer now that you have 2 extra points? I think Bramble is 5.
Yeah, I have to go see what the tier list and
It's either 5 or 6. So are you upgrading like Sceptile, or sorry, downgrading Sceptile to upgrade Cerulege? Maybe is the play. I'm not sure. There's room for improvement there.
Yeah, but it's also a spinner too, which is a nice thing. We're like freeing up.
Yeah, that's true.
A little bit. I think that's kind of what she's pointing out. So
okay, cool. I think that about covers it for Ira. Let's move on to Skyhops.
I'm glad that Toady talked about that last one.
I'm banned from talking about this one.
So apparently there was a mishap with Latios yesterday.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. So
that's okay.
I'll just sit here and set the timer.
Yeah. All right. So Toady's not allowed to talk about it, but I also refuse to talk about it because there's a Slurpuff. So
what are your thoughts on Slurpuff's performance in Hustle this week?
Lee,
what are your thoughts on this team?
My thoughts on this team start at Terra Pecharunt, because that mon's crazy. I really like it. I think the hazards are really good between Slurpuff Webs, Sandy Shocks. It can stack both spikes and rocks, which can give something like competitive Empoleon a chance to shine as well, bringing in defogs and stuff. And then Empoleon also just like looks a little better when you have webs up, because its speed is really bad and you don't want to be investing in speed too much. Latios, Cinderace, Scizor, I really like that top. I've played with Latios and Cinderace together before, and they just kind of pivot and hit things, whatever's in front of them, as hard as they can, and don't really have to think too much about it. I think Cryogonal and Scrafty could be like a better 8-point captain rather than two like than 2 4s that you probably don't want to bring.
Terra Cryogonal is a certified Pokemon, I'm telling you now.
You've been gaslit by random battles.
Nah, dude, it would have won AZ as a match against. Oh, this is a different draft league. What the hell am I talking about? AZ should have brought it against Matt one season in a different league. So it's a real Pokemon.
And those are my thoughts. And for those thoughts, I have this as an 8 with in brackets 0.5.
Nice. I have it also as an 8.5. Lots of things that you covered. I like Pecharunt as a Terra captain seems freaking scary. Things I don't like is everyone's gonna bring fire moves into Scizor, and I don't feel like it has the best fire matchup, especially with like your water type not resisting fire. Doesn't seem too good.
Yeah, I agree.
And lots of fire coverage can then use to hit Latios and Cinderace.
Yeah, and Cinderace even brings in the fire types too. Like a fire type like Arcanine can just try and come in on the Cinderace and then beat the Cinderace 1v1 and not have too much of a backup. Kind of relying just on, I hope Pecharunt can beat it because it has a high defense stat.
Mm-hmm.
Empoleon for Spidef.
Ground also looks good into this team because your water type is weak to ground. That being said, Empoleon, it does a lot for the hazard game, so it's a plus here, but there's some typing things that I don't like. And that's also it. Nah, it's got some front power. There's not a lot of setup, I don't think, because we got like breakers for Cinderace, Latios, Scizor, but there's no real scary setup opportunities other than like Superior and Belly Drum Redacted.
Yeah.
And then the only ghost resist, with a team like Pecharunt on it is Scrafty. which feels bad.
Yeah,
Especially
true.
with Latios, but no, Cinderace, Latios Scizor is a tried and true combination. Cinderace, even with them, I've seen a lot too. It's pretty with the colors and the type cores for the most part. It's just has some glaring weaknesses. I still gave it an 8.5. It's a nice roster.
Yeah. Dark says in chat, I really like Lottie Scizor, having used it myself. Water that doesn't resist fire is annoying with Scizor, though. I had Gouging Fire for that on the draft I played. So, like, Gouging Fire is Scizor, is what you mean, I believe?
Yeah.
Gouging Fire Latios Scizor?
Maybe both. Maybe Double Dragon. I think I've seen Latios Scizor drafted like probably 8 times.
Yeah, it's
good.
really flexible offensively, defensively, pivoting. Now that Latios is flip turn too, it's a lot more of a pivot core, which is really cool.
Definitely good Dragon Steel. And, I dare say it has a solid fairy behind that core as well.
Oh.
Core change the webs? Wait. Wait, where's the Defiant? Core, oh my god, you just leaked the sickest tech! What are you doing?
It doesn't work.
Yeah, competitive doesn't actually work that way. It will work that way for contrary.
Yeah.
But competitive doesn't actually work that way, unfortunately. It requires it's weird the way that it's coded. It requires the stat drop to be from a source that the opponent controls. Like, putting this into Magic perspectives, it's like they're redirecting your spell, and your thing, like your creature, says it has to be a spell that your opponent casts, for example.
I disconnected. My bad.
I thought it was because we started talking about Magic.
It does work now, Dark says. Oh, maybe they've changed that since. It didn't work when they introduced chord change. That's what I know. I hadn't heard about it changing.
I feel like I've heard recently that competitive does not work. Like, competitive and Defiant do not work. Maybe
Lee test it with me while they're talking.
Well, they're saying it works now. So,
oh, interesting.
Maybe they've changed it. And sorry for misleading you then, if that's the case.
Am I bringing the webs or the?
Apparently works. Apparently works. We're good.
Okay.
We got 30 seconds left. All right. Any last thoughts? Because I have a couple last thoughts. If you guys.
Well, quickly. You have 30 seconds before, or 7 minutes. Up to you.
Yeah, well, somebody's holding a gun to my head right now. It's in 18 seconds. All right, so Latios.
No.
And on to the next. Who's next? We have.
Right. We have Howfalcons.
Howfalcons, fellow redacted mans. I'm not doxing you.
Whoa, doxed. Okay, well, now it's my turn. Let's see. What did I say about Howfalcons? Okay.
Snipe the monkey.
I keep saying this a bit. Like, I keep saying, like, all right, I'll take this one. And I look at it. It's like, oh, yeah, this was one thing that I looked at and said, all right, that's my thoughts for the team.
True. Would you have drafted Mienshao or Grimmsnarl as monkeys?
Nah. Grimmsnarl, maybe.
But definitely Simipour, right?
I kind of decided against Simipour. Like, it would have obviously fit on the team. It was the point value problem. Was that, like, if I drafted Simipour, I would have like 18 points left over. So, like, that's kind of why I decided not to. So I said that this team is 5 out of 10. Now, I haven't looked at it super closely outside of, like, one kind of major glaring issue that I noticed with it. This has a sand setter, and there is one mon on here that likes sand. There is one mon on here that doesn't care about sand, and I'm pretty sure the rest of them don't like sand, and, like, specifically don't want sand on their team.
I wouldn't even consider. I don't know. Mega Tatar kind of sets sand for itself, just to bulk and spit F it because it can't hold a smooth rock. It's just. I don't think it's too much. I think it's the other side where the Sandmon doesn't get too much value with Mega Tatar over like standard.
I know. I'm still just saying that, like, you're still bringing in sand and, like, okay, here's your setup mon that comes in and sits in sand and takes chip. Okay,
that's fair.
So
here's your regen mon that comes in and takes chip and doesn't regen as much. Like,
I think that specifically Necrozma doesn't like it because its recovery is weather based.
Yeah,
but I think that
that's true.
Terra Salamence actually doesn't. I think it actually likes the sand chip because it is more likely for things to be put into range over the course of a battle, for it to just pop off with Moxie and just set up once, or just be Scarf and just go off with Moxie. Mienshao, I feel like, kind of likes it too, because it will just often be Life Orb, Fake Out, just make them take extra sand chip and then regen out. Yeah. Steela doesn't care because it's Steel type. I don't think it's that big a deal.
I think with Manchow, it's like the way that I've seen it, at least with the life orb chip. Like sometimes if you're coming in, especially against like a Rocky Helmet or something, that regen is like just the perfect amount for life orb Rocky Helmet or life orb something else. Like maybe you're taking a pivot as well, and the sand might be that just a little bit extra that makes it so that you're not fully recovering the regen that it normally likes to do for a frail mon. So and that's more just
it doesn't
like
really care
like an
though.
eyeball thing.
Like Manchow is always dying in one hit regardless of what his HP is, you know? It kind of just runs regen against bulkier teams that have, I don't know, shit like Toxapex maybe, where that like legitimately can't OHKO it, so it can just stay in and always
eventually
get
die
off.
to hazards,
Yeah, exactly.
I got thoughts on this team.
I think Grimstorm was another one though, where it's like it's a kind of defensive mon that's usually running light clay and not lefties, and then maybe he doesn't want to come in and sit in sand.
Yeah, but I feel like that really doesn't matter that much.
I don't think Sandman's matters in the scheme of this team at all. I've got things to say on this team. One, it's water type and terra type Captain Simipour. That's awful.
Yeah.
Two, you have 5 fairy weaknesses and 1 fairy resist. That also is awful. 3, your rockers are set up win conditions. That kind of sucks. 4, I would love to play this roster. It seems like a lot of fun, even though it doesn't check any boxes. It's like Corey's team where, you know, it's this offense that I'm going to slap you in the face harder than you, but without any synergy and instead just stats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks just so much fun as someone who drafted Necrozma Celesteela as well. This team's going to run you over in like weirder ways, and it's not straightforward, which is itself an advantage in draft.
That's definitely a like 10 out of 10 cool factor. Similar to your rating though, I have it at 4 out of 10 on like an actual competitive scale. It's like there's 2 pivots, 3 if you want to count Grimmsnarl, and I'm not looking at Simipour as a pivot. But like, what are they pivoting to? There's no, unless you're running like defensive Necrozma, defensive Celesteela, which are both fine.
Oh, you mean defensive?
I guess, but like when Ogrepon's in, and you click U-turn, if they stay on your U-turn, are you just sacking them on, or are you switching to your Power Herb Celesteela, or are you switching to your Power Herb Necrozma, or something? Like that's the kind of thing where it's like, you know, there's no backbone to rely on if you make a mistake.
Yeah, I added it to 7, which is pretty low on my scale. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of good mons that don't have the support, but can still win you the game if your opponent doesn't prep for them.
Yeah.
Two
Lee, any
real
thoughts?
quick things. Oh yeah, Lee can go because I don't think he said anything yet.
Do you play this
my
roster?
thoughts.
You do.
What?
You do play this roster.
I do. Yeah, week 4. Look at that. This team has a lot of threats that kill you right away. Not having Ogrepon as a Terra Captain while also being the top of your speed is a little sus. In my opinion, I think it's gonna be.
It can run any item at least because it's regular Ogrepon.
Yeah. It could run any item, and if it's gonna be holding your scarf to be your speed control, then you might be in trouble. But no, I like I'm not sold on the Sand Splash, but I like screens and setup threats. Like that's just tried and true.
Yeah, the MO is set screens, maybe taunt to stop a defog, and just parting shot into Salamence, T-Tar, Necrozma, Steela, setup, win.
I love Moximon, so
Overpawn with SD.
True, Pawn can try and sweep.
Bancho has SD.
Yep, I definitely do think that there's so much opportunity cost with running Terraments with no better captain than Simipour. That's I think you're missing a lot of value and a lot of breaking power too. I'd say if you had a 9-point captain, it could be defensive if you wanted to just have something to throw in to blanket check things, or just like a low to midpoint breaker to or pivot or something would, I think, go a really long way. Maybe over the Dracozolt, over the Ogrepon, something like that. If you split one of those 2 up into, or those 3, if you count Simipour with that as well, into like 2 lower tier mons, one of which can Terra, I think that's. Sorry, you do actually have to have a 9th mon there though. So
Yeah.
You'd have to split up Pawn and Dracozolt, I think, is the play, and or Mian Chao.
Also, this is just something I just noticed, like looking at it. Necrozma, we might end up on a tangent like the other one. Necrozma doesn't have anyone on this team to bait out things that it's weak to for a weakness policy set that it might want to come in on.
But like people have to run things that are that are strong against it anyways.
I mean, it's still Necrozma though.
What do you mean, like things that it can have things that bait?
I guess U-turn, yeah, like bugs. I didn't really think of bug. I was thinking more like specifically. There's nothing really weak to dark on this team, but knock is always gonna be a thing. And then there's nothing really weak to ghost either.
Why do you need to bait them?
If you were running like a weakness policy there, like, or you're expecting
but that
run cover,
that requires you to like switch in and then you lose your turn that you're gonna click autonomous on.
Yeah, running weakness policy is not.
That's true. I guess it's more
to switch into the dark move and then take the dark move again as you autotomize. It's to sit in front of it, autotomize as you take the dark move.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a.
People are going to be
like
running that for Necrozma anyways.
Running the coverage, but yeah. And the other thing too was, and I noticed that Necrozma exists too, so it kind of counters what I was gonna say. But Mega Titar or just Titar in general, 4 times weak to fighting, and it's like really just Mence, but it's Mence and Necrozma to come on fighting because your other flying type is neutral to fighting, and your fairy is also.
And your fairy type, yep.
So it's not the end of the world because Intimidate Mence is still like a really good fighting swap. But in the event that maybe you lose him or you can't bring him or he's already Terrad or whatever, you might be then relying on Necrozma to come in on a close combat, which is not the best.
Yeah. All right. I think that pretty much settles it for the team. I think it's for the most part a barely passing grade, just because there's a lot of flaws, but it's so
7
cool.
out of 10.
It's so cool that I don't care. I think it's worth running regardless.
Yeah.
Hawk, I hope you have fun with it.
Yeah, it's a fun team. Who cares if it doesn't?
Alrighty, on to C2. This I think is one of those teams that falls prey to the I drafted a high tier regenerator core and a bulky ground type, therefore I need my entire team to be similarly defensive rather than branching out into offense. Maybe it's the kind of thing where C2 focused a lot on getting a high tier defensive core, and then all of the good offensive mons were taken.
Yeah.
Had to go to Heatran Buzzwole after. But I can't say I'm a huge fan, honestly, and I have it at a 6 out of 10.
I have it as a 6.5. It's definitely a team that will win games by tilting their opponent when they can't break stuff.
Yeah.
It's lacking offensive power. I think Tyrantrum is an amazing Terra Captain to sort of gain some offensive pressure. Tearing it out of Rock type to get easier setups is good, and then also tearing it up into Rock type.
Into Rock, exactly, yeah.
For Head Smash to just murder everything is a really good idea.
I do think a quick change that could be done to the team that's just a 1-for-1 is just changing the captain from Tinglu to Heatran.
Yeah, I was also thinking about, because I have a note here that said that the combination of Tinglu and Tyrantrum as Terra Captains isn't that good. I don't think Tyrantrum itself is a super bad captain, and I agree that, if you want to go fully into the rock, that's cool. If you want to go just defensively to make sure you get your setup, that's cool. But also,
fighting
it's not
close combat.
But it's not bringing a ton of new stuff to the table when Tyrantrum already has pretty good coverage for the things it needs to also hit, or at least the things that aren't taking a neutral head smash anyway, it has coverage for. And when I use it, I never really felt like it needed different moves or different type coverage. So it's it's nice as a Terra Captain, and I don't think it's a bad Terra Captain option. But when it's your only offensive option as a Terra Captain, it's you might not find yourself carving new niches for it that you need a Terra Captain sometimes to cover offensively. And Tinglu
I love Tyrantrum here.
Doesn't help you at all with that. It's just defensive Terra type or defensive mon with a Terra type on a stall team. It's cool.
Right. I do think Tyrantrum is honestly just one of my favorite parts of the team here. Yeah. To be totally honest, if it was Terra Heatran, that Terra combo I think would be one of the better combos.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Of the division. But I think it gets way too hazy for me as a team around the point where they started picking Buzzwole Togekiss, Serena. Because the order of draft was Slowking, Aloe, Tinglu, Heatran. And that's like very defensive minded right off the get go, especially if Tinglu is your plan for a Terra Captain over Heatran. And then from there, I think you just need something that's fast and offensive. And they went Buzzwole, Zoroark. Zoroark is fine. I don't hate the Zoroark.
But it's
but it went Buzzwole, Zoroark, Togekiss, Serena, and I feel like one of these is a hit, and maybe you can keep like one of the Togekiss or Buzzwole to be the ground switch. But I don't think you need Buzzwole, Togekiss, and Serena because you have a Heatran, so you need to take ground moves, right? Or like the Heatran Slowking combo.
I didn't even notice that speed drop from 110 to basically 80.
Yeah.
And 110 being the
I'm putting it down to 6.
I'm also at 6 for I don't know if I said that, but I didn't really notice the Zoroark before. I actually think that's pretty nice synergy to go with the fighting weak Heatran, Tinglu, and Tyrantrum. Like it really forces you to play that game to make sure that you're hitting the right target. And otherwise the team isn't like super weak to just the random move that'll hit the Zoroark that you might want to throw out. And at worst, like you're throwing a ghost or dark type move into the Tinglu or into, something that just doesn't care at all.
Yeah. It should be noted that it can't actually disguise as Tinglu because Tinglu's ability announces itself.
That's a good
But
point.
I do like disguise with regenerator mons because they're often at full HP.
Yeah, that's true. It hides it.
So until Zoroark takes a hit, it can continue disguising itself, even regardless of whether Slowking and Aloe take hits, if they heal back to full and switch out.
I guess the downside is that if it comes in on hazards and then like switches out, and then it's back at full health, it's like, well, wait a minute.
Just run Boot Zoroark and you're chilling.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we covered most of it. Like my other thoughts were where I basically just said like it's a stall team in draft, like or not like full stall, but it was like it's a defensive team in draft. And normally I would have ranked it lower. I had 6, but with the power creep that exists now and the buffs to Alomomola with Flip Turn and stuff, it's like you can't even count this much of a defensive team out of the game in draft when it's just Alomomola and Tinglu. Like that combination alone, it doesn't matter how much you prep for that, you're gonna lose to it in some matchups that you prepped exactly for that combination because it's just what they do. Like and so I think it's like it's still fundamentally not a super bad team or anything because it's just a solid team that's going to be really hard to break, but it does have the flaw of it's like, well then okay, what happens when you have to flip it on offense, right? So I agree on that.
Yeah, I agree. It does seem really annoying to try and actually take on, but I think as soon as one thing ends up being able to set up that has the right coverage, like that's the thing is so many mons have so many different coverage moves that something that has a random air slash and random earth power or something and like random dazzling can kind of just go through the team with an acid. I know that's like just a weird made up example and I don't know if that exists.
I know what you mean though.
It's that kind of thing where like you have 4 times weaknesses that aren't on Terra Captains that are potentially abused and could like in the long over a long battle, if you switch into your Heatran on this thing that you don't know has like a random bulldoze or something, eventually one of those times you're going to be conditioned to keep going into the Heatran to take the ground move on the switch. And that's just kind of defensive 4 times weaknesses.
Maybe I'm blind. Who is the other 4x
Buzzwole.
Weakness? Oh, flying, right. I was thinking psychic. I was like, well, wait, but Bug's not weak to psychic.
Yeah, so I like the team. But yeah, I think there's too many things that I have been rating other teams on that this team doesn't have.
Yeah.
That keeps it at a 6 for me.
I think that's fair. Anyone who has not spoken?
Lee.
This is the team I would like to play the least. Doesn't mean I don't like it, but I would fall asleep piloting this team, I think.
Well, luckily, neither of us are facing it, according to the schedule. So.
It's okay, just run like Bulka, Buzzwole, Scarf Eruption, Heatran,
Yeah.
Slowking, Banded Tyrantrum, and you're chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funnily enough, this is the team I rated the lowest, but it's also the one that I would probably as someone who alt tabs command shift Qs out of games that have faced stall people on ladder. Yeah, no, I don't want to play. I wouldn't want to play against it.
Command Shift Q.
I have a MacBook.
All right, on to the last one for the night, and we are on much better pace than last night. We are at 8:37 right
thank
now.
Goodness.
I think we were about
the third period's
like 10:30.
Yeah.
To this point.
Okay, Roy Ace.
So, another promo,
Roy
but
is
Demo then promo, right?
Roy is the champion, the truant champion, who just got promoted this season. I will say I don't think his team is a good look for the truant champ, to be totally honest. I think I don't think it's one of the better in the division. Like, I'd say it's definitely bottom half. I'd say it probably teeters around a 5 for me out of 10, maybe a 4.5. I think it's a little lower. Looking at a few things, the speed is like whatever. You have Walking Wake, Cobalion if you wanted it, and then Zera over 100. But it's I feel like it's hard to describe. Like, Wake out of Sun and out of Rain is fine, but just feels like it's leaking potential. Terrazera is amazing in my opinion. But then you kind of get to the middle of the draft and you're looking at like Enamorous Therian and Cobalion and Muckalola and Terra Cradilli, and you're like, don't really see the vision here.
Yeah.
I really like Enamorous Therian. I want it to pop off so much. It's a ball of stats. Like, please, I want this model to perform, so me believing in it isn't like wasted. Wake, I agree with the leaking potential. I don't really like it here. Gliscor is just relegated to utility bot.
I like the Gliscor just for
Gliscor's good, but it's just it's not supported.
Yeah, looking at like Zera, Gliscor, Skeledirge, Urshi, I think are the only parts of the team that I like as a unit. But then like you've got Urshi, Rapid, and Walking Wake, and neither of them are particularly like defensive waters. Cobalion is kind of a fake steal. Even Enamorous, I feel like it's a decent fairy, but definitely priced to be a captain.
Yeah, I do like Terra Cradilli. I'm a fan of mons that have immunity abilities with Terra, because it can you can use it as a blanket check to any mon in the game.
True.
I think
right, you could go for example, if you're playing against that Wake and whatever, and you want to Terra Fairy Cradilli, resist both is immune to both stats.
True.
It's like stuff like that.
Yeah, I do like that.
Too bad the Wake's on your team.
Ghost into the Keldeo kind of thing.
Ghost into the Keldeo, yeah.
So I will say with the Terra captains, I said this in the last one too. I know Naheim is a Terra Zera believer. I don't think Terra Zera is bad, and I think it's good with Terra. I don't know if it's worth 18 points in one of your two captains as a Terra captain. That being said, with this team, I think 4-point Cradilli Terra captain is some of the best value that you're gonna get as a second Terra captain with an 18-point Terra captain. From all the teams that we've seen with like 18 and 19-point Terra captains, where it's always just like, well, that kind of sucks because now you have Terra Simipour. Right? Like this I think is actually one of the best combinations of a super high Terra captain and a super low Terra captain.
I'm looking at you, Simipour.
Yeah. With the rest of the team, this was one this was the last one on the list, so I really just kind of phoned it in when I put the number. I put it at a 7 because I saw a couple mons that I like, but now that we're kind of like looking at it, I'm noticing a lot of the issues with it. I really like Skeledirge in draft. I think it's a great draft mon. I think between Dirge and Gliscor, you're gonna have a lot of like it's really good defensive synergy there. Enamorous is a cool mon, and I think it can be good with the right team around it. It's unfortunate that it is a during Gen 8 edition, that if it was added in Gen 5 with the rest of the genies, this mon would have defog, but it doesn't. So like it
probably
so that's
toxic.
So yeah, and toxic too, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like this is a great mon, but then you compare it to the rest of Nat decks of similar mons that have those things that this mon doesn't have, right?
Yeah.
And so it's still a good mon. I don't think I am also kind of a semi believer in it, so I don't think it's wasted points. I think it's fine even if it's not a tear cap. I think
And Ember should have U-turn.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
But either way, I think now that you've pointed out, because I didn't even notice the wake. The wake doesn't fit on this team at all. Like
Feels
you're
out of
not,
place.
there's no sun splash. There's no like I don't know, and you have another very threatening offensive water type. You turn these 16 points into something else, and I think the team gets a lot better just immediately, depending on what that 16 points goes into. Because I don't think, like you said, like the Zarek, Gliscor, Dirge, Urshi, and I will add an Amorous to that. Those 5, I think, make up a good group of mons, and then yeah, maybe just fit that puzzle piece kind of in the middle, like whatever that's going to be in place of Wake, and I think you can have a solid team. I didn't put too much thought into Cobalion. I don't really have a lot of experience with it, but I agree it's like not a real steel type. Maybe it's just a filler mon that you see at 11 points that checks some boxes, but I don't even know what box it's checking because you also have a fighting type. So like
This
I
would
don't know.
maybe be a place where Iron Crown is better than Cobalion too.
That's a good point. Yeah. And Alila Muck is one where I think is just I think it's solid for 11 points. It can cover.
Yeah, that's fair.
It wins some matchups for you. It just makes other matchups easier. You're not really like it's your grounded poison type. You're not really drafting it as a fighting resist poison type. You're just kind of drafting it to be Muck. And in the same sense, you're not really you're not really drafting it as a fairy resist either. Like it's just kind of. It does Muck things, and Muck things are good in some matchups. I think that's perfectly fine for an 11-point mon.
I love Muck.
But, yeah.
To close us out, Lee, you have any final thoughts on the team as well?
I don't have anything here that hasn't already been said. Just like Gliscor's kind of roped into clicking defog almost every game. If you want your like Skeledirge and Walking Wake to stay healthy.
Yeah, and Amorous.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed. Okay, well, I think that pretty much does it for our Swarm Division roster reviews.
Yeah. I guess we can take one last look here. You can just look through the stats if we want to.
Yeah.
Just kind of see where they played out.
Funny enough, we see Metro with the highest special attack on the Melmetal team.
Yeah. Let's see that speed. Wow.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, C2 with the defensive team is at the bottom of the board on speed.
I thought Metro would be
surprisingly also at the bottom of the board on special defense too, with the Slowking Galar and the Heatran, which is pretty surprising.
There's got to be something bringing it down, though.
Well, I imagine the Buzzwole.
Yeah, Buzzwole.
Oh, and the Pikachu definitely doesn't help.
Pikachu, yeah, Pikachu does some. It would be interesting if we could do this and like. It's hard to exclude certain things, but like to be like, all right, let's exclude some of the 1 and 2 pointers, or for specific stats, be like this mon does not count toward the total.
So like only mons that are like only the first 9 mons you drafted, for example.
Yeah. Or say like if a mon is below 3 points, then ignore stats under a certain value, right? So you can still count them if it's like say you have Shuckle, right? Like that'll bump up your stats because. Sure, it's a really defensive mon. If you bring it, that's what it's doing. But you're also not counting Pikachu as like, well, this team's special defense kind of suffers because it has Pikachu. It's like, no, if Pikachu comes, nobody cares. Like it's just dead.
I mean, I think average stats is just a bad stat.
Yeah,
it's legitimately really just there because it's like it's fun to look at.
Yeah,
right?
It's
I don't think anybody actually uses it to analyze their matchup.
Point.
Yeah, it's just a conversation point. It's totally just for fun.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. Yeah, so I think that wraps us up. Thank you to everybody who came out to watch. I know we had a bunch of people who haven't been around stream much before. We had Dark. Thanks for coming. C2, I saw you were around. Skyhops, you tune in every once in a while. We had who else we have? We had Metro, Fennec.
We have
Luke was here for a while.
Heezen. Shoutouts to Lee Heezen in the chat.
Bears was here. Lethal was here. Honestly, we had a pretty good turnout, so thanks for coming out. It was fun.
Fennec.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Monkey Boy was here. It was fun
Luke
to
was
hang
here.
out and chat with the boys about some Pokemon. And we'll be back same time
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, 6 p.m. sharp.
Yep. Exact same start time.
Exact same start time.
We'll be
To
live.
talk about the Hustle roster reviews. So hope to catch you then.